Gentlemen, it's that time of year again. That ever momentous occasion that, when actually viewing, can feel like a chore that keeps you up way too late at night. But goddamn if it doesn't feel like a night at the casino, hoping that you'll hit the jackpot. With great news of releases, great news of updates, or just the hope that the awards are given in manners that don't feel absolutely biased or bought. My friends, it's time again to predict for this year's Game Awards.
Yeah, in other words, the amazing Geoff Keighly has brought his circus tent once again, so we need to see what the clowns have to actually produce.
Live on Fortnite.
God, please, if I see another goddamn anti-vape commercial.
Oh, good lord. Anti-vape commercials now coming to Fortnite.
Why not? But anyway, let's not be too much on booth because, as usual, we have a fuck ton of actually categories to cast our votes in. And as per usual, we start with the most important of the one, the Game of the Year award. Now, to be fair, preceding what the actual nominees are, there were actually a lot of games that this year could have been actually perfectly candidateable, for the place. So logically, someone had to go and others had to actually step in. Now, let me start with this, giving possibly the most positive news out of all of them. Out of all of the 30 nominations, Hogwarts Legacy was not nominated for a single one. Anyway, we're at the Game of the Year section, the first one. So what do we have here? We have Alan Wake 2, developed by Remedy Entertainment and published by Epic Games. Baldur's Gate 3, developed and self-published by Larian Studios. Marvel Spider-Man 2, developed by Insomnia Games and published by Sony Computer Entertainment. Resident Evil 4 Remake, developed and self-published by Capcom. Super Mario Bros. Wonder, developed by Nintendo EPD and published by Nintendo. And the same applied to instead The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Rather than that, I have kind of a problem. I really don't mind pretty much 90% of these nominations, except one. The Resident Evil 4 Remake. Not to say that it's a bad game, or even, that it shouldn't be qualifiable, but the problem is that I argue there have been releases over the year that arguably had probably a bit of a better priority over this, namely Armored Core 6, Lies OP, and especially Final Fantasy 16. I'm not gonna mention Starfield instead because I frankly don't know enough about the game to see if it's really good or bad on that front, But my point is, Resident Evil 4, despite being, having the feeling of the AAA budget and everything, it's still a remake of an old title, so dumping it here alongside these other titles really doesn't feel as right, while the others have been mostly, even including examples that they made, have been basically sequels, to the properties.
Yes. I guess it does beg the question, is it wrong for a remake to be a candidate?
No.
On the one hand...
No, but I argue it's wrong for it to take priority over others that I do instead argue felt, needed a bit, a bit higher in terms of ranking.
I honestly do think Hi-Fi Rush should have been given a spot here. Okay, here's what I say. Either choose better or let more games actually be the nominees.
Yeah, wasn't there another year where they had, 7 nominees? 7 or 8 nominees?
I feel like there was, but I can't recall.
I can check.
But that being said, what about our actual votes on the matter? Aside from what you just mentioned about Resident Evil 4, my vote can go to literally any of these. Each of them has their own pros and cons about going on. If I had to unbalance, I probably need to restrict my choice between either Tears of the Kingdom and Baldur's Gate 3. And choosing between the two, I am to go with Baldur's Gate 3, mostly because out of all of these, it has another important factor compared to the other. It's the revival of a franchise that was basically dormant for a very long time and manages to succeed in flying colors of being, a successor to that. So that I'd argue it gives a bit of a boost compared to some of these others, which are basically just more direct sequels to games that have been released a few years ago. Tears of the Kingdom is still fantastic on its own. It even improves on the plot and its presentation that Breath of the Wild might have had, especially also the stupid durability system. But I just argue that Baldur's Gate 3 has a more of an impact compared to the others. What about you, Jova?
Ironically, it seems you and me think a lot alike because, okay, my main tie here would have been between Baldur's Gate 3, Tears of the Kingdom, and possibly Super Mario Brothers Wonder. Although I'll say this, Mario Brothers Wonder is easily the one that loses out for me because as excited as we all were for Wonder, and don't get me wrong, it does a lot right, adds Daisy to the main cast, gives us some new power-ups and whatnot. Having actually played it, it's new Super Mario Brothers with a new coat of paint, I am not sorry.
Part of me, maliciously wonder, pardon the pun, that it was chosen to counterbalance two elephants in the room, again, pardon the other pun, that are present here, namely Marvel Spider-Man 2 and Alan Wake 2, which came out very recently, especially Alan Wake 2. And again, I get the idea Geoff was like, well, let's throw it in Mario 2 because it seems like we might be a bit more fair this time around, shall we?
Also, just to correct something from earlier, no, it's been consistently 6 games since 2018. 2017 before it was just 5 games.
I must have mistaken for something else, man.
Well, okay, that still does beg the point, though, that they did change the number at some point. Like, and does there really need to be a limit of 6? Like, I will say this. I definitely agree that games like Hi-Fi Rush really missed out on the boat here. And yeah, it is a bit eyebrow-raising that a lot of these games are relatively recent on this list. That being said, I'm gonna go with Baldur's Gate 3. Don't get me wrong, Tears of the Kingdom looks to be and is quite the phenomenal experience. But Baldur's Gate 3 is just that in the full package. Like Tia mentioned, it pretty much brought a franchise back from the dead. But aside from that, it was successful because it legit is a fantastic experience with a wonderful cast. And the gaming community has been going absolute nuts over this. Even the Mashed YouTube channel got the actual voice actors to do videos.
Oh, they're very chilled. There's even something that I might mention later on again, but the narrator, the voice actress who provides narration for the game, which means having a lot of heavy lifting to do for the game, even posted publicly on YouTube, her outtakes, which, are always a source of fun to have, especially for an ambient like that. So there's a sense of of warmth and welcomeness from the people who worked on the game.
And trust me, in this day and age, we can use a lot more of that from the gaming industry. So yeah, Baldur's Gate 3. Although I will say this, despite my comment on Super Mario Bros. Wonder, it is still a pretty great Mario game, so there's that. It's just that I gotta give it to Baldur's Gate 3 because, again, Baldur's Gate 3 is an experience both in-game and with the community that has been just genuinely wholesome and great, and definitely an example for the gaming industry to follow.
What about you, Dej?
Alright, so I'm going to be looking at it from a reception standpoint, and from what I've been observing on Twitter and YouTube and whatnot, I think it might be Baldur's Gate 3 because it's following this, and Tears of the Kingdom are following the same thing that Elden Ring felt last year, where people who make games are coping and seething about this. It's impossible for us to make a game like this. Translation, this game is getting good reviews, it's good, and we spent years working on a game ourselves, but now our higher ups are going to force us to make a game just like this, even though we're already halfway to the
it is kind of what happened with Elden Ring, where people from both Guerrilla and Ubisoft were like, yeah, this does not have enough information on the screen.
It also it also kind of happened after God of War, the fourth game where suddenly a lot of other games were suddenly trying to go for that full tone.
I argue, Joe, it started with The Last of Us instead.
So I guess it's unanimous. We all vote for Baldur's Gate 3 here.
Seems to
and
be.
there's also Tears of the Kingdom because it's like, yeah, Breath of the Wild already won its flowers.
It might be a case.
I feel like it's also suffering. And I also feel like gaming, like people in the gaming industry are also see as like, sorry guys, we just can't compete with Nintendo after their 40-year legacy. It's impossible for us.
Hashtag Mario Odyssey was robbed.
I'm going to be civil about this, and let's say Baldur's Gate 3. Move.
Yeah, well, we don't have to move too much because much like the at least the previous year, we have one of Jova's favorite gimmick. We move on to Best Game Direction, awarded for outstanding creative visual and innovation in game direction and design. And if you remove Resident Evil 4 Remake, you have exactly the same contenders as the previous entry.
Why is there Hi-Fi Rush in this?
Yeah, I mean, again, if you weren't going to give it Game of the Year slot, at least give it a Best Game Direction slot, because Hi-Fi Rush really is all that. I mean, and don't get me wrong, yes, these games are contenders, but man, I really do wonder if we really just need to not put a cap on how many games can be nominated, or at the very least, expand the limit.
Now, that being said, at least to me, at least half of these contestants do have still a reason to be here.
Yes.
The two that I will argue might not are Baldur's Gate 3 and Tears of the Kingdom, for the simple reason that they use similar mechanics to their previous game. Tears of the Kingdom has a slight advantage because it has the creation tool, engine that allows you to do weird shit like golems with flaming penises, or Benjoka's nuts and bolts vehicle, for example. But it's a gimmick that we have seen already in the industry. My reasoning for the other three is as such. Super Mario Bros. Wonder introduces several new elements that apply a curveball to what we've seen in the new Super Mario Bros. Genre, particularly, the Wonder Flower and not necessarily the power-ups, but you do see a reflection of that because some of the new power-ups imply a new type of level of physics. The elephant one is not just about being big and squashing blocks. There's also stuff that you can do with the trunk, the storage of water, for example. But the Wonder Flower, for example, causes the environment to change, and it's not necessarily always a thing that you have to do. It might be a potentially an optional thing.
Yeah, it's mostly optional if you want.
So it is technically, a thing that fits this category. Marvel Spider-Man 2, I argue, excels in while not implementing too much new stuff, it ironically does one great thing. It gives a good tech demo to how a Superman game should be. Yeah, because of the gliding mechanic, that is present, which is ultimately refined, combined with the easier loader times and rendering capabilities. This gives no excuse to Warner Bros. And DC to actually develop a good Superman game. And then there's Alan Wake 2, which, if you have any experience with recent Remedy products, it should goes to say that it emphasizes a lot of unconventional survival horror elements and psychedelic imagery, particularly also reflected in its gameplay. And this one ups even more compared to both the first Alan Wake and Control. So, like I said, all of these three have elements to stay to be a good candidate for my vote. But I'm guessing I have to go with Alan Wake 2 ultimately for the reason that I just said.
As for me, I'm gonna go with Tears of the Kingdom. Good arguments for all these games. They're all extremely well designed. And yeah, Super Mario Bros. Wonder does have a lot of cool new power-ups. But man, Tears of the Kingdom just takes it to a whole new level with the expansion of what you can do in that game.
It's like, hey, try breaking our games. We saw what you did with Breath of the Wild. Come at us. You can't.
I do. Yeah. I do like how that's pretty much Nintendo EPD's tactic of going at these sorts of games. Oh, they want to try and break it? Well, fine. We'll just go to a point where they can't break it. Or if they do, we'll incorporate that as an official mechanic and let them know, yeah, we knew you were coming. Yeah, we knew you'd use this exploit. Here's some coins for you, winner.
Joe, did you see that one thing that somebody made a marketplace where Ganondorf is standing there selling you fruit?
Was that a mod?
Yeah, they tend
It's
to
like-
do it a lot, especially with the emulation, Jova.
It's
Yeah.
like, man, Hyrule economy is so bad, even Ganon needs to work.
It's gotta make money for them plans. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom.
What about
And
you,
with,
Dedge?
with Wonder, with the Wonder Seat, if Wonder Flower, Nintendo, the Mario team basically has their answer to the escape sequences from Wario Land. How
Aye.
everything just flips all over you. I finally beat the game last night, 8. And I'm like, oh my god, wow, this mechanic is so good.
So
And
I'm
with-
guessing.
And with Spider-Man 2, everything I've seen, especially with that instantaneous loading, how you can just jump from a point at the map, it's like, wow. And like what Teal said, man, sure wish we got a Superman game. All right, let's go Spider-Man.
Alright then. Next category is Best Narrative for outstanding storytelling and narrative development in a game. Essentially, what the story is about, and the quality of it. Returning, we have Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3, and Marvel Spider-Man 2. The newcomers are instead Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty, developed and self-published by CD Projekt Red, and Final Fantasy XVI, developed and self-published by Square Enix. We do have a kind of an unprecedented here by having technically a DLC expansion in these candidates, because Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty constitutes that. Now, I have informed myself about the story of all of these to get an idea on what we do have. So I have to give mild spoiler warning, I suppose. I'm not going to discuss these in details, but just to give get an idea, and that we'll have to describe some of the elements into it. And I'm going to start from the bottom. Marvel Spider-Man 2 is a good alternate take to Web of Shadows, if you play that game. It has an interesting idea for an alternate version of Venom that's not Eddie Brock. I do wish there was a bit more balance between Peter and Miles, because this feels more of a Peter cannot do anything for shit and Miles has to save everything, even when he's not asking to. But we'll have to see how the future titles develop with him, since it's strongly implied that he's the main lead for future.
Yeah, they outright confirmed, yes, Miles is Spider-Man. That's going to be the main Spider-Man until they bring Peter out of retirement.
Look. I'll just say this: Spider-Man 2, good game. I do feel like there are some things people don't notice that are kind of issues, especially.
Well,
with
I
the
don't know much about the story, so if
to me, it's more of a presentation kind of thing rather than the story. The story is perfectly fine. I've seen so much worse Spider-Man stories.
I do know that, Harry Osborn is Venom, which is an idea from the crappy Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon.
I think it's perfectly executed.
That was a good idea. I was like, it makes more sense for Harry to be Venom than a random guy named Eddie Brock.
I'll just let you know, that's not the only cue they take from the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon.
Oh no, they called Miles Kid Arachnid.
Why couldn't we just call it Ultimate Spider-Man? A lot of people on Twitter are making fuss about saying you should call Miles Morales a Spider-Man just like Peter. I say call him Ultimate Spider-Man. It still has the title, but it's different enough to distinguish the two. Kind of like how Miguel is called Spider-Man 2099, for example.
And if anything, calling him Ultimate Spider-Man would sound as a compliment in universe.
I feel like anytime they try to give Miles a new name, it always sucks. Like Kid Arachnid or Spy D, which is spelled Spy.
Well, that's a problem we offers, I argue.
Please
but
don't remind
we're
me.
Not here for that. Strictly speaking, for the plot of the game, again, was just describing. Final Fantasy XVI tries to be inspired by the titles of the Ivalice Alliance, titles that heavily delve into politics and as such huge political problems, not in a sense of problematic, but themes that are very grave, like mass genocide, warring nations of regions that don't care about their subjects, poverty, rape and pillaging, and of course also slavery. It's a very good attempt, and I don't think the story is bad at all. It's perfectly good and serviceable. Maybe not so much for this particular world. It's a perfectly serviceable title that can, just exist. But I want to see what eventually the future title of the series will be. And, I'm still cool to see what Clive will do in crossovers. The Phantom Liberty Special Cyberpunk 2077 is interesting in a sense that it provides different type of scenarios for your character, including a stealth section that's very tense and evokes old survival horror, old school, Alan Wake 2, like I said, it's a good continuation from a previous game, but it does one or two things that I'm not particularly fond of, particularly involving the teacher or character, but I guess I should have seen it coming into another sequel of these. And there's what gets my vote, Baldur's Gate 3. Simply put, it's also a good continuation from where the series left off, and thanks to its gameplay, which allows, since it's structured like a role-play session, allows different kind of creative and interesting outcomes for almost every situation.
I was going to ask, actually, as somebody who more so is entering the Baldur's Gate franchise with 3, how heavily tied to 2 and 1 is it?
Well, it's still a sequel to those, You're given basically a recap of important things that happen. There's a lot of text. There's a lot of text and a lot of reading. Again, the narrator is doing a great job in filling you in any gaps that you need. My point being. The Baldur's Gate 3 has an edge compared to the others because, simply put, it has more story and it gives more freedom to the player to enjoy this kind of story. So, easy win on my part. Jova?
Yeah. Definitely Baldur's Gate 3. It has pretty much the best polished of these stories. It's the most interesting to me. It has the best balance overall. Like, as somebody who was relatively new to Baldur's Gate with this franchise, it's also a great entry point too. At least I felt like I never felt lost. I'm only asking Tio how heavily tied it is because I'm wondering if it's like a case of
no, it's a direct sequel. Plot threads and characters from the previous titles also show up.
Oh yeah, so but it's like you won't feel too lost if you haven't.
Like I said, you get also the gaps filled in.
Yeah, so again, it's the perfect package story-wise. Some of the other stories I could cite some issues with. Baldur's Gate 3 has the least of those, and honestly, again, just feels like overall the best package. This is also considering the fact that it includes multiple different endings as well. With some variations.
If you played already something like the Pathfinder games, you also get a general idea what this might be. It's just that it's presented also a bit more directly, like a proper roleplay session, complete with, actual dice throwing.
It also has the best overall ensemble cast of his games, though granted, I guess that was kind of tipped in its favor given the style of game it's going for. Still, though, yeah, Baldur's Gate 3 gets my vote.
What about you, Dodger?
It's kind of... People are like, no, not Final Fantasy 16 because there are some things in its plot that feel not as strong as it could have been. Especially when it comes to the topic of slavery. It doesn't do. It's like, what's the message you want?
There is the elephant in the room we mentioned last year about choosing different types of representation of people, particularly for this kind of theme. I do believe it's mostly just bad PR, and the game in itself still presents the issue in its own kind of way. It's just not on the same level as what a game written by Yasumi Matsuno would probably do, but I don't think it's even that as bad as all of the internet tend to say about it.
Also, it is kind of weird that Cyberpunk is like, okay, we can do DLC expansion stories. Then why isn't Xenoblade free here?
I feel like this might be
That's
the Game
I'm
Awards.
not. This is a bias. It's just like, wait.
No, I
why don't
get
we-
what you mean.
My guess is that the Game Awards are trying to shine a spotlight on Cyberpunk now
They're
that it's
trying-
okay to like the game.
Yeah, they're trying to push a bit the narrative of Cyberpunk having a redemption arc and now being is good, which I'm okay with that, but I can see manipulation where it's happening under my nose. I know that Garfield tells me that I'm not immune to propaganda, but this is a case where I'm actually seeing it happening under my nose. I'm like, yeah, no thanks.
Going with what you guys are telling me, I'll choose Baldur's Gate 3.
All right,
Boy,
then.
we got a Baldur's Gate free sweep going so
The
far.
rampant bisexual energy, my favorite.
Wonderful.
Next, we have Best Art Direction for outstanding creative and/or technical achievement in artistic design and animation. We have returning Alan Wake 2, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, and The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. Newcomers are Hi-Fi Rush, developed by Tango Gameworks and published by Bethesda Softworks and Microsoft at this point, and Lies of P, developed by Round A Studio and published by NeoWiz Games. I wonder what the P stands for. This is a bit tough. The bias that is in me would immediately gravitate towards Lies of P, but objectively I cannot do that because it's a case where it's essentially copying the homework of someone else and it's doing a great job at that, but it's still copying the homework, in this case Bloodborne. The art design of Lies of P is fantastic, but it's nothing really innovative or new that we see. But the criteria of this award, it's just cannot consciously get my vote, even if I desperately would want to. I'm there a bit between Hi-Fi Rush and Super Mario Bros. Wonder.
Me too.
Mario Bros. Wonder has the thing about a more polished and more pastel kind of art style that is completely new to the series, not to mention the different kinds of animation and, as we mentioned, the chaoticness of a Wonder Seed. Hi-Fi Rush manages to create that kind of cel-shade CG cutscenes and mockups and in-game movement. But it's just really pleasing to the eye, something that Arc System Works perfected, and this is clearly doing something similar to that. So I'm really not sure what to choose between the two. If I had to basically toss a coin on the matter, I'll say Hi-Fi Rush, just because, between the two titles is the one that, has less people working on it and has a bit more of an underdog edge to it, so let's give that a boost. Jova.
Yeah, no, Hi-Fi Rush really was a sleeper hit in pretty much every sense of the word. Like, yeah, it got a spot, but clearly they were more Microsoft were more convinced that the big finale game of that session, the Redfall, the vampire shooter game, was going to be the big
Redfall.
one, which is very ironic given how that game turned out. Oh boy, but no, Hi-Fi Rush really was an amazing hit. But it did so much right when it was shown. First off, it showed the gameplay before delving into the story. Secondly, it sported a very new and neat mechanic way of playing. I mean, not something we've never seen before, rhythm-based and all, but it really made it so that the attacks would all sync up with the music, but not in a scripted fashion, which was the insane thing. Like, a lot of times, in, say, a rhythm game, of course you get attacks syncing up with the music, but this was not first and foremost a rhythm game. It was first and foremost a platformer where everything worked in with the music. And there was no catch to it. Game came out, it was great. So great, people wanted DLC, and we got DLC. I don't think we got story DLC, but we got some pretty cool costume DLC.
There's also a reference of all things to the chair sequence in Xenogears Disc 2, and apparently that happened only because the makers of the game were just so fan and literally asked Square Enix permission. I don't understand people sometimes.
I know, like, of all the things, like, I mean, you could arguably do that chair thing without it being copyrighted, but they had that much respect that they went to Square saying, hey, guys, you remember that obscure game that would have been Final Fantasy VII at some point, but turned out to not to be, but had the giant mecha, and may not be the most well recognized, but hell, Sakurai actually referenced it in Smash Brothers Ultimate. Yeah, could we reference the chair scene? And then Square would go, what chair scene?
Basically. So I'm guessing your vote is for Hi-Fi Rush. Huh?
Oh yeah, Hi-Fi Rush. Like it was a tie between Wonder and Hi-Fi Rush, but Wonder's probably gonna get plenty of other categories it'll show up in. I guarantee it'll probably show up in the family
Rush and
games
Wonder
section.
have the same amount of categories nominees.
But yeah, I'm gonna say Hi-Fi Rush has the slight edge for me. Mario Wonder is great with its pastel look, but Hi-Fi Rush gets a nice look with the cell shading, which is always a win in my book.
What about you, Dej?
All right, do I choose 2000s nostalgia pandering? Favorite franchise bias? 2000s nostalgia pandering. Favorite franchise bias.
Do I dare ask which of it is your favorite? I'm guessing that's Mario.
Why do you ask questions you know the answer to, man? Again, I just love how very expressive and vibrant Wonder is. Like how much personality it has, how animated Mario is, what you can do, how the stages are given life, especially when you have the Wonder Flower. It also has my one weakness, which is the limbo style. You know, with
the silhouette kind of level with contrast.
Yes, I'm always a sucker for that.
Also, Bowser literally turns himself into a castle. Funniest shit I've ever seen.
I mean, I part of me was thinking that was going to be a reference to the Bowser Planet stuff going on in the Galaxy series, but
nope,
not really.
No, it's different.
I'm gonna give it to Hi-Fi Rush because it's a new IP, so I feel like it deserves its flowers. And you know what? Microsoft deserves a win. And also, Tangled Games work needs something because all they've been known for is you have Shinji Mikami make Resident Evil 4 again.
That's the thing. Also, they bled most of their important elements, so now these basically now are on their own into doing what they can do in the future. So
sure hope they'll be around for a while.
This makes me wonder, do you think we might be getting a Hi-Fi Rush sequel in the future?
Possibly.
With its reception, and apparently it did well.
The story also ends open enough to continue, so there is that. Anyway,
right, then. Next
category. Best score and music for outstanding music, inclusive of score, original song, and or licensed soundtrack. Returning, we have all of them. They are returning in some kind of fashion. Alan Wake 2, composed by Petri Alanko. Baldur's Gate 3, composed by Borislav Slavov. Final Fantasy 16, composed by Masayoshi Soken. Hi-Fi Rush, audio directed by Shuichi Kobori. And Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, composed by the Nintendo Sound Team.
Wow, you guys can't even give them their names. Good job.
Fucking
also,
hell.
I just need to address the elephant in the room. Octopath Traveler 2 was robbed.
Absolutely. Well, we had noticed that even last year, where the Live Alive remake should have been also in the best score.
Live Alive remake, Sonic Frontiers, Mario Plus.
Yeah, speaking of which, why isn't Sonic Frontiers in this category?
It technically does apply. I mean, it
came out last year, so
just like Xenoblade 2.
Don't get me wrong, all these games have great music. But I'm sorry, we're in the fourth category, and a lot of these.
The repetition is being super noticeable, yeah.
Like I've said before, if you're not going to expand the limit of nominees for a category, maybe at this point we should have changed up some of these more like, okay, Hi-Fi Rush, I get it. That's completely music-based, so fair beans. And I get it. They're great, but there are plenty of other gems that...
Let me put it this way, Jova. At least in my personal opinion, Alan Wake 2 has no place here. Like, the score...
isn't Alan Wake 2 score more atmospheric?
Yeah, the score is not bad, but it really has no place for an award like this.
I'm gonna be real. I feel like the same thing with Tears of the Kingdom because
Tears of the Kingdom is basically on autopilot. It's the kind of orchestral that you like, but it's basically on autopilot.
But it's also one, you barely hear the music most of the time because because
Atmospheric
it has the
Souls
same
like
thing
experience, yeah.
it has the same thing with Breath of the Wild. Two, when it comes to music with those two, people are like, "Oh yeah, it had a soundtrack." And
But
okay, I need to say this with 16. I have not listened to it besides I think the first boss fight. I'm aware that Masayoshi Soken, am I
Mm-hmm.
saying his name right? Uh, I'm aware that he has some health issues, so I'm not bad. I'm not going to critique him. But from my understanding, he felt very constrained with this, and I hear that he is fantastic. This is not his usual stuff compared
No,
to
as
14.
actually that was my point going in because my vote actually goes for Final Fantasy 16. I understand what Hi-Fi Rush is going through with its own particular style and everything, but as a veteran playing of 14, the score of 16 is pretty much the same kind of vibe. So, and honestly, I think it's
Oh,
way more deserving than this. You know.
I was just told it's like, yeah, I'm kind of disappointed with what he did in 16 compared to 14, but
That's
like,
just
all
like
right, if
your
you
average Kingdom Hearts fan telling that the score of Final Fantasy 15 is Yoko Shimomura being restrained. They really don't know what they're talking about.
all right,
okay, okay.
I'll take your word for it.
I'll just say this: Nintendo wise, if we had to go with one of the two big heavy hitters, I'd probably have gone with Mario Wonder over Tears of the Kingdom
Or
soundtrack
Xenoblade
wise.
Fury. If we're going with the
Right, that
DLC.
did
Xenoblade
come out
Freedom was
this year.
nominated last year, well, to be fair. You would have had to go for the expansion, you know. And
Yeah.
I argue the music in that one is not sufficiently strong to be present here. Like I said, though, it's not like the other major releases of Nintendo really feel like it will be here because, Pikmin 4 definitely has no place here in terms of, the quality of
I
its
mean, if
music.
it wants to be technical, if these awards were if they waited to reveal anything for until December,
Yeah, there's
Mario
Super Mario,
RPG could have been
the
here
Super
because
Mario
it comes
RPG
out.
remake, and I get the idea it's gonna also do the same, get the same end and not be nominated next year.
Better
Yes,
luck
it's like
next year.
I've heard this leak soundtrack. Oh my god!
It's very
Do we
great.
get
Again,
any?
much like with Live a La, the Live a Live remake, Yoko Shimomura remade the entire soundtrack, and she's great at that.
Did we
She
get any
made me.
new?
You know that sad song that plays in Mario RPG that's
Hmm.
supposed to be a gag. It's like, wait, why am I taking this seriously? Yoko, no, you
Yes,
went too
Jova.
I
hard
mean,
on
she
this.
did something similar to that in Mario and Luigi Dream Team, so yeah. That being said, did she add anything new and original, or is it all just remixes?
It's
The
all remixes.
But there are new remixes because
Very
a couple of
nice.
fights are have a bit of a variant to them, specifically for the post game. So there are a different kind of battle excuse for having different variations of the battle themes. Anyway, your
Also,
All
vote.
right.
be honest. Who talks about the music for Baldur's Gate 3?
It's okay. Again, a bit similar to the music present in Tears of the Kingdom, at least to me. It's basically okay, but on autopilot.
For Stellaris Baldur's Gate 3 is, yeah, the music is probably one of the things
it's
I hear the
just fine.
least about.
What about your vote,
So,
Jova?
yeah, Hi-Fi Rush. Like, I feel like Hi-Fi Rush justifies its existence on this list the best out of these guys. For obvious reasons, anyway. And yes, even if a lot of their songs are licensed music, the stuff that it does bring to the table is still great in and of its own right. And it's a game centered around music that uses it well. So, yeah, Hi-Fi Rush easily.
Yeah, High Fire. I feel like this category should have been better than what we actually got.
Well, let's see for the
Yeah.
next one then.
Best audio design, recognizing the best in game audio and sound design. And we have our usual suspects: Alan Wake 2, Hi-Fi Rush, Marvel Spider-Man 2, Resident Evil 4, and newcomer Dead Space Remake.
Developed
By
by
another
Motive
studio.
Studios and published by EA. Now, if you forgot what I mentioned last year, audio design literally means everything audio-wise compared aside from the score. That means the quality of the voice acting, the reverberance of the sound, and the sound effects. How good they are to convey the ambient. And I argue most of these perfectly fit. Even stuff like Resident Evil 4 Remake being survival horror, which means, you have to be careful about your steps, the direction of the sound, stuff like that. Maybe Hi-Fi Rush doesn't have too much of a place because it's focused squarely entirely on having a musical type of theming, meaning that the rest of the audio design takes a bit of a step back. So compared to the others, I think it doesn't have too much of an edge. Alan Wake 2 will be a very good contender because the psychedelic effect is applied also to the sound as a result, so we had to do a lot of modulation. But I'm kind of biased and I'm gonna vote for the Dead Space remake because they just perfected what was already a great sound design for that kind of game. Or the original. If you don't have any experience with Dead Space and you haven't seen the remake, know that they managed to, make the reverberance even better for the already great sound design that there was in terms of conveying the atmosphere and the horror of the Ishimura station.
Does anyone know if Spider-Man 2 does the same thing the first game does, like when you're swinging and Peter's talking to
Yes,
somebody,
it,
depending on...
it is becoming more and more a thing that's happening where alternate takes are present in case you have different ratios of your health to symbolize that the character is fatiguing. What about you, Joe?
Easily Hi-Fi Rush. Like, Hi-Fi Rush programs the audio into the very steps you take. Like, every action has audio tied to it, which makes it very well done and unique. That's not to say that any of these are slouches, but again, Hi-Fi Rush takes it to a whole nother level. Again, if it were strictly just a rhythm game, then it would be like no duh obvious, but keep in mind, at base, it's a platform game, managing to work all the rhythms of pretty much any action you take into it all. So yeah, Hi-Fi Rush easily.
What about you, Dej?
Well, going with the principle of I can't vote for Hi-Fi Rush again, man. I already gave it enough rope. So I'm gonna give it to something new, Dead Space remake, because I feel like that game kind of just fell off the face of the earth.
I'll admit, I kind of forgot about that
It was
game. What
successful
happened?
and got good reviews when it came out. That's it.
But knowing this is EA, you can never be too sure.
I think the studio is doing something else at the moment, so we don't have to think of anything Dead Space related, alas.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll just give it to just so it's the underdog compared to the rest.
Best Performance, awarded to an individual for voiceover, acting, motion, and/or performance capture. Our candidates are Ben Starr from Final Fantasy 16.
Really wish they
Cameron.
did. Really wish they didn't mention which specific roles that they had. I know a few of these, but I have to search it also for the others. For example,
Yeah, they don't mention the specific roles.
Ben Starr, if I
Cameron
recall correctly,
Monaghan.
plays Clive, but go on, Jova.
Cameron Monaghan, the protagonist of Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Idris Elba from Cyberpunk 2077.
No.
Phantom Liberty. Melanie Liburd from Alan Wake 2. Neil Newburn from Baldur's Gate 3. And Yuri Lowenfeld from Marvel's Spider-Man 2.
Okay, let me just start with this because I need to address this. I don't think Idris should win this. I love the man. I can listen to him, read the phone book.
He's
all
just
day.
an important NPC in the game. Like it's a great performance as usual, but it's not really that impactful. If I had to be honest.
And also, it just feels like not really Geoff, but the whole Game Awards wants to be taken seriously, so we have celebrity here.
You remember Dej, what Kratos' voice actor did last year, right? He monopolized with his stupid, speech, and he says how great the game was because instead of being a video game script, it was an actual script. Like, not those kiddie winks,
Hated that. But yeah, no, I mean, look, I see what they're doing here. It's Idris Elba. Man's full of charisma, so that might help the game.
He voiced Knuckles. That counts, right? That he has experience with video games.
All the same, though, the seal's very transparent with what they're doing.
Yeah.
This is not.
It's kind of how I felt when Kiefer Sutherland won the award.
This is not helped by the fact that if you followed some social media, Yuri Lowenthal started kind of having a bit of an ego, thanks to his role of Spider-Man, because it seems to be a thing that's happening to people who are working with major Sony titles. First Troy Baker, then Kratos' voice actor last year, and now with Yuri Lowenthal. All these people who are like, oh, I'm so more sophisticated thanks to this. It's more important compared to the rest of my career. And I fuck off. It's great. It's fine, but don't go around this your past because of this.
I feel with everything that we've been witnessing this year with strikes and how, man, voice actors really get the short end of the stick.
Not as much as VFX artists, but I get what you mean.
But I'm starting to understand why some of them will have an ego on social media because they feel extremely underappreciated, but
it's not a good reaction.
Like you should still be humbled.
Mm-hmm.
It's the classic saying. It's the classic saying, 2 wrongs don't make a right. Yes, by all means, voice actors do get mistreated and not appreciated as much as they should. That is not an excuse for them to abuse their fame or try and use it to galvanize people on a false crusade. Bayonetta free!
Also, if you want to ask what my vote is, let me just preface something because I think there's a glaring omission. Amelia Tyler, aka the voice actress that is the narrator of Baldur's Gate 3. She really has to carry the game on her shoulder by telling most of the very important narration, including very little minutia like stuff that you need to know. Sure, the other voice actors that impersonate the characters are equally important, but I can tell you already that they chose Neil Newborn because it's basically the meme Astarion, one of the more
yes,
the vampire. It's one of the more popular characters among the fandom, and of course they went there. But I argue Amelia Tyler should have been there. She deserves this award, full stop. And honestly, I don't really know who to choose if I had to be honest. I'm guessing I might be torn between Ben Starr and Cameron Monaghan. But I'm gonna go with Cameron Monaghan because out of all of these, he's the one who is basically the more sincere in terms of placement, and behavior.
For me, it's a toss-up between Neil Newborn and Yuri Lowenthal. Like, ego aside, I really did enjoy Yuri Lowenthal's performance as Peter Parker, despite some narrative issues I may have had here and there. No, he really does get the 2 tones of Peter down when he's supposed to be in and out of the black suit.
Newborn, that's because he's using his Sasuke voice.
Neil Newborn, I mean, it's obvious why Astarion's the favorite with how great his acting is, even though personally I prefer the human mage character, but I digress. I'm in the minority on that. Astarion's, of course, the precious vampy boy, which, to be fair, still great. I'm gonna go with Yuri Lowenthal, though.
Edge.
Well, Pedro showed me the demo of Final Fantasy 16, and I really loved how Ben Starr performed as
like you said, he's a good choice too.
He like I see him on Twitter. That dude is a treasure. I normally don't say that about people, but like I just love how charismatic, and you can tell that he does love the role. And I remember looking up. I need to remember. He used like Clive's performance as a way to deal with how he lost his father as well.
So, I'm telling you, Dej, I don't know what kind of internal relationship is when it comes to the voice acting for Square Enix of America, but they must be doing something very good because all the people who go there to get their career jump started, in case they haven't had already, they seem to be always in a good relationship. They seem to be somewhat more consistent in the business, and when the voice actor strike happened, only a very minor fraction of the games of the company were afflicted, the Life is Strange prequel. But aside from that, they were actually still in good relationship with the voice actor. So I can tell you that whatever they're doing something right.
Like, even with their Like, to give them credit, even with their stinkers like Final Fantasy 13, they still maintained overall good relationships with the voice actors, even if development was a mess.
Let me give you an example. The CDNT, a game released, in the mid 2010s, basically, when it came to having the English voice actors, they had to obviously get back all the people. One of the characters in it is Vane Solidor from Final Fantasy 12. If you don't know about its development, Final Fantasy 12 took advantage of its localization to be more flowery and had, especially for the villains, a lot of British theater actors, people who normally don't voice act at all. At best, they might go on TV, but they're mostly on the stage. I can tell you that Vane's voice actor has only that role under his belt when it comes to voice acting. Most of everything else is, either TV appearances or, stage performances. And yet he still came back to voice the character, So that's with a huge distance because he hadn't voiced the character in 10 years at least. So it shows how much of a good PR apparently there is when it comes to Square Enix of America. But I get your vote is for him, right, Edge?
Yes. Man, I also I hope they probably won't, but it would be nice if they could give a special shout out to Charles Martinet since he's
It will be
not Mario
nice.
anymore, and
Maybe he should present the award.
Yeah, better him than Troy Baker.
Uh,
The Golden Joystick Awards.
And next is innovation in accessibility, which recognizes software and or hardware that is pushing the medium forward by adding features, technology, and content to help games be played and enjoyed by an even wider audience. The nominees are Diablo 4 from Blizzard Entertainment, Forza Motorsport, Hi-Fi Rush, Marvel Spider-Man 2, and the two other newcomers aside from Motorsport, Mortal Kombat 1 and Street Fighter 6.
The first one developed by NetherRealm Studio and published by Wonderboard Graves, the other developed and self-published by Capcom. And to be fair, Diablo 4 is also a newcomer for these. Okay, I don't know the intricate details about these. I did follow an article that did mention during the development of Mortal Kombat 1 about their accessibility options. And to be fair, they actually did a couple of unique things, particularly regarding to the fatalities, for example, and in general the combat, in order to give indicators to give you a general idea, in the positioning of you on the screen. So it's actually Mortal Kombat 1 is actually very newcomer friendly for those who don't know anything about fighting games and need to understand the basic things like zoning, positioning, high, medium or low kick or punch, and how to structure combos. So to give credit to NetherRealm Studios, they did the best probably they could, at least for the time being, to structure accessibility options in a way that makes it more, friendly towards an audience that's completely clueless. I do know, however, that the other year, the Forza game that was present in these options actually did one because it included, for example, a visual commentary for the Death End. So me thinks they probably did the same for Forza Motorsport. So if I had to, stick my nose, into this, I'm gonna vote for that one. Like I said, I do not know the details for everything. I cannot tell you for my life if Diablo 4 has that many accessibility options, for example. I know for a fact that Spider-Man 2 does have that because, it's a trademark for major Sony releases at this point to have them, so I do know. Nor I do know if Hi-Fi Rush and Street Fighter 6 do have them, but again, judging from the information that I know, I'm blind guessing on Forza Motorsport. What about you?
Man, we really need a Chiroi for this one.
Once again.
Yeah, I mean, the most I was able to get for accessibility from Street Fighter 6 was a Street Fighter 6 accessibility review, which has pros such as comprehensive audio cues, dynamic camera assist, and streamlined combo options. However, under cons, there's no menu narration and no captions. So maybe it's referring to something else. Like, I'll admit, accessibility is not something I keep a track
It's
of.
it's also a wide, big topic. You cannot just throw it, around the term and thinking it nails down just a few small things.
I will say this, back when this award was first a thing, it was much easier to keep track of, accessibility because, well, sadly, not many games are really doing it.
I mean,
so
I guess
when
it's
a
a
game
good
did do
thing
it, it was
now.
big news. Yeah, I guess that is a good thing now. It's just, and let this not be like a means that, oh, companies shouldn't pay mind to it, because no, it still is important. It's just something that we don't often keep track of because we don't need them as much. That is not to say that there is not someone else who may not need that.
That being
Again, really wish we could have had the right guest for this, but I guess I'll go with Mortal Kombat 1, since it seems to be the full package in that regard, which I guess it really needed to be, since it's once again a reboot, except not really of the franchise.
What about you,
Like, it's
Dad?
I'm not sure if you fully mentioned it, but Mortal Kombat does a thing where they describe how the fatalities.
Yeah, there's
work,
also that.
correct?
Actually, I didn't mention that because I told this to Shira. You get audio descriptions of the fatalities, and she was like, "Cool."
Yeah,
nice.
I'm like, and to my understanding, Hi-Fi Rush is a game that anybody can play because, like, yes, it is technically a game for rhythm, but it's like, oh no, don't worry. If you're not good at that, you don't have to worry. There's an option for you to just play it, even if you don't have that. And again, Spider-Man 2, basically the same. It's basically setting the same standard that The Last of Us Part 2 had
In
done,
general, in recent years, they become basically the traditional standard for Sony games. Some of them add a couple of things, maybe more, as they go on, and then they pick up, from that. Is the reason why I forgot if it was last year or 2 years ago I voted for The Last of Us, remake, because technically it was very fitting for this kind of award because that was basically its major selling point.
Like, for as much as I did not like Last of Us 2, I do think it earned that award when this award first became a thing because it really did go above and beyond for accessibility
As
standards.
they say in my country, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar.
Which, you know what? I'll give credit to the Game Awards. I would not be surprised if the creation of this award is the reason we're actually seeing games pay attention to accessibility needs a lot more. Because not only is it an award, but this award now shines a spotlight on accessibility or the lack of in the industry.
Honestly,
and you
just
don't want to
for
be caught with your pants down.
speaking of pants, honestly, just for funsies, I wish that in this category there was that indie game that Nitro Red review. I forgot what it's called. It's essentially a giant tribute to Super Mario 64 with a giant rabbit. That
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
pseudo regalia. There you go. But here's the kicker, Jova. The avatar, the player character is supposed to be this furry bait rabbit with long legs and everything. You can actually equip pants for the character. They're just cosmetics. They're not actually an armor that changes anything gameplay wise. They're just cosmetics, and the act of toggling them on and off is labeled as an accessibility option.
Goodness me. Yeah. I guess I might need pseudo regalia.
Yeah, it's actually very cheap on Steam, so this is also my time to plug it in. Just get it, it runs perfectly fine even on any one toaster, and it's a good time.
Nice. But yeah, I'm going with Mortal Kombat 1 because the title is innovation. So, like,
What about
just having accessibility settings won't cut it. You gotta also add something new to the table, in my
what about
book,
you,
anyway.
Hmm. Because I hear that Street Fighter 6 actually it does it. Fighting games is a genre that the companies want as many people to play as now. And from what I've seen, Street Fighter 6 does set a standard to it. So I want to give it that.
All right, then.
So we got our votes all spread across the board on that one.
Next is, oh man, games for impact for a thought-provoking game with a pro-social meaning or message. Just like
That's not a buzzword at all.
the other years, these are basically the games that try to have a story that talks about the current social political problems, like gender discrimination, racism, immigration, fighting against psychological problems. The struggle people with disabilities had to have. So, as they say in 13 Reasons Why, start a conversation, It's just a matter of, try to see if the Game Awards wants to be affected to this or not. But let's see the contestants, shall we? They're all new, as it is to be expected by this category. And we have A Space for the Unbound, developed by Mojiken Studios, Toge Production, published by Chorus. Chants of Sennar, developed by Roundisk and published by Focus Entertainment. Goodbye Volcano High.
No, okay, wait.
Developed and self-published by Co-op. Chia, developed by Alwacheb and published by Kepler Interactive. Terranil, developed by Free Lives and published by Devolver Digital and the Netflix gaming brand. And Venba, developed and self-published by Visai Games. Now I'm
going to these games are
actually... Volcano High does not deserve to win this.
Right? Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, why is it even here?
Okay, again, I need to provide context for each of these because last year we had the problem where we didn't know the majority of these aside from the one that won, the one done by the developer that was working for David Cage before he treated it horribly. So let's give some context. Again, Goodbye Volcano High was in development hell, and it's supposedly a story that uses anthropomorphic dinosaur-esque character to talk about teenage life, social issues, and gender identity,
And this was also, if you guys recall, the Rapture stuff that was happening back in 2011. That was the person who made this was reflecting on how their life was like during that time period when they were in high school.
The problem is that during all of its development hell, this game could not catch a break. It was unveiled during the PS5 presentation alongside basically, titles that pride themselves on big graphics, and then this one showed up with rather amateurish cutscenes, because to be fair, it's an indie game. It's not, backed by a super major studio, so, fair enough, but, talk about mood whiplash. It was taking, surprisingly long enough for what it was, basically a glorified visual novel with just a few rhythm elements to it, to represent the music meaning. And then the developers started to have meltdown on social media, and if I recall correctly, the writer was fired because they were a creep or something.
She was a Kotaku writer.
Oh my god.
Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it had to be something worse than that.
Wait. Let me finish because I know that's a huge. There's a lot against her right now. She was a Kotaku writer, and she wrote about. She played a bunch of not safe for work games, porn games, and there was one with Harry Potter and Pokemon, and everyone was like, "What the hell are you doing?" It was one of those articles that Kotaku were basically bullied into taking down. I don't think they did because that's how their website is, but they had to make a disclaimer and edit. And this was years ago, but people on Resetera found out about it and they wanted her gone. And I understand that.
The point is that
that was years ago, and it's still stupid of her to do it, but it was years ago. It's like you should have gotten rid of her because she was the head writer of that game. And since you removed her, a good chunk of the plot was disappeared.
Yeah, basically the game had to restart development from scratch almost entirely, and the finished product that we get is insipid, like for lack of a better term. It's kind of like the Duke Nukem Forever effect. I'm not sure what people were expecting at this point. But that's basically the major reasoning why I don't think it really should win anything in this. It's a
This
game that
plus
was
the
supposed to actually arrive, being developed and promptly being forget about it. The presence being here feels more of a joke than anything. Like Geoff wants to have a laugh. Just to give more context about the rest, just again to give an idea, Chants of Sennar is about not necessarily a parallel to the Tower of Babel's, mythos, but the idea is that your actions manages to have a big consequence, and it helps connect the people with each other, particularly via overcoming language barrier. It's actually pretty neat. Venba is about people from India immigrating to Canada during the 80s, and while it's a cooking simulator, it talks about basically the social issues that they might have grown through. It's an entire family that has to go through with their own arc. Very stuff that you might have seen in other media. It's on the book, but if you're into that stuff, it's perfectly for you. Terra Nil is, if I recall correctly, a city builder-esque simulator that essentially is the classic nature overthrowing civilization after humanity is gone. What will happen, vegetation reclaiming buildings, animals using that as their nest, that kind of nature, reclaims the planet after the evil humans are gone. Classic stuff. Chia, we saw a couple of trailers in the past in some Nintendo Directs and State of Plays, if I remember correctly. It's about this girl using mechanics similar to the one of the recent Legend of Zelda games, to moving around, and exploring islands. And if I recall correctly, also reconnecting with her friends. I think that's basically her major gimmick. Then we have My Vote, A Space for the Unbound, which is essentially a story about overcoming anxiety, depression, and all other psychological dilemma. That is basically why it gets my vote. It's the game that I know the most about, and the one that has the themes that probably relate to me the most in terms for the category of games for impact. So that's probably why it gets my vote. But I had to preface that it's very subjective on that kind of sense. I think, a game like Chants of Sennar, Vamp, or Terra Nil were perfectly other good candidate for this award. No real promise with those. What about you, Jove?
boy, awkward time for me to say that the one I'm most familiar with is Goodbye Volcano High. God. Okay, that being said, if I were to pick one of these, I think I'd go with Tchia.
This is the one you saw the most via trailers, I guess.
Pretty much, yeah. Also, it does look legit interesting. Although I do wonder, is this category pretty much going to turn into the indie game category
No,
each year?
this is in this. While it does include indie games, remember what it's called: games for impact. It talks about games that has to talk about the social issues that are resonant to this day. To this day in some capacity. Essentially, the kind of game that people on Twitter will complain are quote unquote too political.
I just find it weird that most, if not all, these games are indie games this year. So I guess
I feel like indie games are
Like,
the ones
if
that will be willing to take the risk to tackle some of these things.
if you want to be fair, I suppose Spider-Man 2 should be present here because a good chunk of the game is spent as Miles Morales having to deal with his own set of, problems and discriminations. So, I don't know.
possibly.
What
Although
about
I
you,
wonder if
Dej?
they're just afraid that one would obviously sweep this award. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Tchia.
Dej, what about you?
So this might be wrong for me, but I remember seeing Venba in one of the Nindies directs a while back, and I was like, oh, this looks nice, and I did like the concept about it. I was like, this is cool. Something I learned about games for Impact is there was this one video game developer that has a lead role, a character that's a minority. And he said the reason why he made it on his own is because he tried pitching this to publishers, and publishers didn't want to make a game about that for even though it's like, oh, even though yes, he is a minority, but it's not like tackling a deep theme or anything like that. But it does put a lot of perspective as to why this category is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Alright,
Speaking
then.
of which, the next one is an old familiar of us because even the candidates are almost identical. It's the best ongoing, awarded for a game for outstanding development of ongoing content for whatever evolves the player experience over time. Just
I
similar.
love how 4 of these are like ones that we have seen at least 1 year.
I argue
so
2 in
far.
a row, basically. We have Apex Legends, developed by Respawn Entertainment, published by EA. The critical award-winning MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV, developed and self-published by Square Enix. Fortnite, developed and self-published by Epic Games. Genshin Impact, developed and self-published by HoYoverse. And the newcomer here, Cyberpunk 2077, developed and self-published by CD Projekt Red, returning from another category. At the cost of sounding, monotonous on that, I'm still voting Final Fantasy XIV, even if I argue it doesn't really deserve it as much, because in the last couple of times, Final Fantasy XIV has kind of started slacking a bit when it comes to updates to Endwalker. They have announced the new expansion that's supposed to come out next year, which also prompts the game to arrive on the Xbox consoles, but for this year, it really wouldn't deserve it, but I don't really want to vote anyone else because each of these has some level of culpability, overall.
Yeah.
Maybe Apex Legends is the most innocent out of them, but not enough to get my vote. Sorry.
How messed up is it when the game under EA is probably the most innocent of the games?
And I don't even want to diss completely too much Cyberpunk 2077 because, to give credit where it's due, they could have just left the game as it was, and just develop a new one out of nowhere. But that would have, technically been more helpful in scamming people off. So at the very least, they bother to create an actual expansion for the existing product at the very end. It's just that compared to the other titles, I don't think it deserves my vote for the award. That's all.
No Man's Sky's problem was they lost a good chunk of their game due to a flood in their offices.
That and their lead guy was just not a great PR guy. Like Sean, meant well, but he was terrible at interviews.
I cannot really speak for CD Projekt Red because if you know them, they're a Polish studio, and if you know anything, development teams from Eastern Europe are still, not really in a great mood because of, real life events that are happening all around them. But I do not know how much this affects CD Projekt Red, and doesn't seem to be as much as some others would. So I don't know.
As far as we know of the game's development, none of that affected the development enough to the point where it's a reasonable excuse. As far as we know, development was relatively undeterred. But yeah, this is a very frustrating category to vote for, I'm not gonna lie.
So what will be your vote, Benjova?
Oh boy. I mean, on the one hand, Final Fantasy XIV, but like you mentioned, even that's starting to slack. Fortnite, I guess, technically hasn't done anything wrong. At the same time, though, has Fortnite lately done anything particularly incredible?
They reintroduced the original map and make it a big deal about it.
Yeah, I wanted to contribute with that and say Fortnite because it brought back old content and it's a way to show how far the game has come since. So when did it come out? 2017, 2018? Around that time?
For when Fortnite came out?
Yeah.
If I recall correctly, Fortnite, yeah, I think it came out in July 2017.
Yeah, so it's like showing how far the game has come, and with all the quality of life updates as well. That's cool. So I'm gonna put my vote in for Fortnite.
I still cannot do it in all confidence because, again, Epic Games, as a result, trying to, chasing desperately popularity into trying to making their game, be about to play as this iconic character from a franchise you might have grown up with, and now they can hold a gun even if it goes completely against their character,
I mean, let's be honest.
Not to mention the disregarding of, Epic Games' original, flagship IP, Unreal Tournament, Don't forget that, Tim Sweeney and his cronies, delisted all the Unreal games, something that would be basically their equivalent to Mario, from the Epic Game Store for no real reason other than to boost popularity to Fortnite.
Look, like I said, this is a tough category to go for because each of these games, I would argue, has some issues behind them. And to this, I just have to ask, are there no other new ongoing games that we could have added to the category?
Like Dragon Ball Breakers, I guess, Sure, you can argue it might not be, not super popular, but, super interesting in comparison, but I think it can qualify.
And again, I know Cyberpunk 2077 got better, but did that really warrant the one newcomer space on this? Screw it, I'll go with Apex Legends. Congrats, EA. You're the most well-behaved at this point.
I think you did vote for it either last year or the year before.
Okay, let me ask this. What's going on with Apex right now?
I don't know.
Think I've seen... I heard any update. All I just know is people want more Titanfall.
I know that Respawn... I think Respawn, updated the Titanfall 2 so it could work again with its servers, but I do not know the details. So
now that being said, I'd say that
Smith still voiced Mirage.
I think
now that being said, the next category I'd say is much better chosen. It's best community support, recognizing a game for outstanding community support, transparency, responsiveness, inclusive of social media activity, and game updates / patches. Once again, we have our good old friend Baldur's Gate 3, which is definitely looking to be the Game Awards darling. Cyberpunk 2077, Destiny 2 from Bungie, Final Fantasy XIV, and of course,
once again,
No Man's Sky.
Yeah, and again, and because it's sounding monotonous, I have to go with No Man's Sky yet again because recently they just had yet another big update which has a fuck ton of new stuff. So in comparison to everyone else, it's still the one that's still kicking and still doing it, as free updates, completely out of their own will. I will also mention this. I don't think Baldur's Gate 3 really should be in this because the game literally just came out. It did not really have that much time to have that many, patches on expansion. You want to know what the big contribution in terms of patches of Baldur's Gate 3 was? Accidentally recognizing that they had left a cat without, its fur texture, putting it back there and people demanding that it was reverted to the way it was. That's it.
I guess they could be referring also to that transparency during the development with Baldur's Gate 3, which is
I suppose
one reason people have been swooning over that game because, the community conversations with the devs, the actors, and everything was stellar.
That being said, I'm still voting for No Man's Sky just because, it's the simplest, and most, prominent out of them in this kind of category to me. What about you,
also,
Jordan?
I am not voting for Destiny 2 because
no,
Destiny. I don't think Destiny 2 is in that much of a bad spot, but it's there and once again not deserving of this award.
Bungie, I know you were dealt a tough hand. I can't, in good faith, give the vote to Destiny 2, though. It just never interested me, despite the buttload of marketing that wouldn't leave me the heck alone back in the day.
Also, Bungie recently is having a lot of trouble because it's bleeding a lot of people, including very key people that have been there since almost the beginning.
Halo.
So, yeah.
Yikes. Well, okay, not even Activision got them to leave. What the heck happened?
Sony bought them. That's what happened.
Some people who got laid off said this was going to happen even without the Sony buyout.
True, but don't forget that Bungie is responsible for basically telling Naughty Dog, that multiplayer game that you're doing for The Last of Us doesn't really work. Start from zero.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, as for my vote, No Man's Sky. For as rocky a period as it started off with, and the same applies to Cyberpunk 2077, I still would say No Man's Sky's improvements just dwarf everyone else because it is one of the crowning examples of what you do when you're dealt a bad hand and when you release a bad product. You don't go all spiteful. You don't try and justify how the game turned out. What you do is well, let your actions speak better than your words, essentially. Which is what they did and what they have continued to do. No Man's Sky went from being one of the worst games to being one of the best games, and it still is seeing support to this day at a point where arguably they could just try and move on, but nah, they are
Or
really
even
just
make people
building this.
like the DSB DLC that you have to pay, but no, not even the VR mode actually was, to be paid. So they're really just confident more people will buy their game. There's that.
And which has apparently been working out. If I recall correctly, they've even added new story content.
Well,
free of
they've been
charge,
doing
too.
it, with each subsequent update, expanding a bit more the stuff that you do quest-wise,
But yeah, no, easily vote goes to No Man's Sky. And I know I've talked about how we get repeat seers, but the thing is, No Man's Sky actually does put in the work to warrant its repeated presence, I'd say.
What about you, Dej?
Yeah, it's a unanimous No Man's Sky.
All right,
Good
Dej.
job, Sean Murray.
Well,
Let me read this one.
While you're at it, Dej, go ahead and read this next one.
Best Independent Game for outstanding creative and technical achievement in a game made outside the traditional publisher system. Cocoon, Geometric Interactive, Annapurna
Annapurna, yes.
Annapurna.
Interactive. Dave the Diver, Mint Rocket, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Dredge, Black Salt Games, Team 17. Sea of Stars, Sabotage Studio. Viewfinder, Sad Owl Studios, Thunderful Publishing.
Why is Viewfinder here?
Let's address the elephant in the room. Dave the Diver is not an indie game. I repeat, Dave the Diver is not an indie game.
What? You mean the Game Awards would include a non-indie game in the indie games section?
I'm not blaming Geoff for this because again, he's not the one who makes the votes. It's 173 journalists or something like that. They just saw this thing, saw that it's pixelated. Wow, so retro. Therefore, it's indie. It's made by Nexon. The guys who made Maple Story.
I've been following particularly this year a channel that I probably should have for a long time because it has existed for a couple of years, of a guy called CB11, which specializes in talking about first-person shooters, both old and new. And one thing that he does is to try to give coverage to a lot of, indie shooter games that gets released, as they get on, and especially ones that really do deserve it. And a couple got released. This one, I would argue, should be present here, like Zorch. There's also the full release of Turbo Overkill, a game that has been in development for a bit, but now it's been finally officially released, which is a tribute to both Doom and Quake, and it's very, very fast-paced and actually very fun, and honestly, that could have been put into this category, I don't know. But yeah, there's also another thing, everyone has been their mother that knows anything about indie games have been talking about Pizza Tower. Why isn't it here?
It's technically in the next category.
Yeah, it's about to show up, but I argue it should also be here.
Especially the funny thing is, the Game Awards are already getting backlash for including Dave the Diver on this. How insane is the bloodbath going to be if Dave the Diver wins this section?
No, I think it's gonna win. I am positive that he probably what he's gonna win is the one that I'm casting my vote for. Sea of Stars. It has received very good reception also from journalists. It's probably still the most popular out of these because it being a Kickstarter founded that it had a substantial development cycle. It's absolute classic in terms of gameplay because it's yet another throwback to Chrono Trigger. In terms of gameplay.
Mario RPG.
Mm-hmm.
And Breath of Fire, which is an immense plus for me.
And it's also a prequel more than anything, to an already existing indie game, The Messenger. So it has a lot of baggage on top of itself, and it's also really good in terms of presentation. So again, the perfect kind of package that I think makes it deserving the award out of all of these. And also, just to mention, in case you don't know Viewfinder, Viewfinder is a game that it's effectively started as a mod for Portal, I think, but developed into its own game. The problem is that the story mode that they had that has basically the same kind of protagonist-esque dialogue structure that Forspoken had. The exact one that turned people off about. Did I just freaking do that? That kind of thing. There's an infamous clip of, I think it's Vinny from Vinesauce, that is playing the game, he's having a good time, but as soon as he heard that line, he turns the voice acting off completely.
Yep.
Whoopsie.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't really think the game should be here, to be honest. Probably it deserves better than Dave the Diver, but it probably should, something else should be still in its place. What about you, Jova? What's your vote?
Easily Sea of Stars, the best well-constructed of the games. Like I mentioned, it's taking cues from Breath of Fire. That's an immense plus for me. Breath of Fire needs that recognition, but all the same, it's actually a good game from the get-go. And again, has a... Okay, it uses pixel art, but in a way that a lot of indie games don't use pixel art. Ergo, using pixel art to form more, clear-looking pictures, if you get what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no, easily Sea of Stars.
What about you, Dej?
The ones that I have experienced, Viewfinder is like a Portal-like game, right?
Like I said, it did started as a mod for one of the Portal games. I don't know if you one or two.
That it does look fine, but the one I have the most experience with, I haven't played because broke, is Sea of Stars. And so I was like, man, I want to play this because it harkens back to NES RPGs. But from my understanding, like a lot of retro throwbacks, it does understand why people like these games.
It's more akin to the Super Nintendo era, Dej. The Messenger was more akin to the NES era because it's basically a Ninja Gaiden clone.
Well, I'm talking about in terms of throwback RPGs.
Oh, sure.
Specifically. Like, it seems like from who I follow, a lot of throwback RPGs don't get why people like them. It's just like, oh, this is what we remember, but we don't have the same combat depth or anything like that.
Alright, so I guess you're voting for that too.
Yeah.
Speaking of indie games, the next category is Best Debut Indie Game for Best Debut Game created by a new independent studio. Self-explanatory, I guess.
How incredibly specific. It's almost like we needed to make more awards specifically for indie games.
Returning, we have Cocoon, Dredge, Venba, and Viewfinder, and a new one, Pizza Tower, developed and published by Tour de Pizza. And I don't know.
I wonder which one we're gonna pick.
I don't know about you guys, but you know what time it is.
It's pizza time.
God, I cannot even do that.
So when we said that this should have been nominated for Best Indie Game, remember, for the first 2 months of the year, that's when it came out, there was a lot of crossover fan art of Peppino meeting other video game characters like Mario, Sonic, Wario.
Which mean Lario,
I mean that too, but there was a lot.
Mark my words.
Crossover fan art is like it hit a certain energy that I haven't seen an indie game hit with some people since Undertale.
There's also the fact that Pizza Tower has been in development for a fuck ton of time.
Since 2019.
I don't think it even had a Kickstarter. It just started developing on its own, you know.
Yeah, because the guy had he had it on his Patreon.
Like, on top of being a great game, it's incredibly meme-worthy, too. Like, you probably have seen the live Peppino reaction meme at this point.
Not just that, it's a combination of things, like the taunts are reference to, you know, iconic poses from all over stuff that the internet popularized, for example, you know. I also argue that it resurrected a 20 song that I think it encapsulates a lot of people on Twitter with its title, After You Get What You Want, You Don't Want It. But in general, the game made sure to have, ironic enough, the right ingredients to make it work out. So at least for me, my vote goes to that.
Pizza Tower for me. It's not even close. Like, and that's not even to say these other choices are bad. It's just no.
Well, like I said,
Tower,
Viewfinder has that kind of problem that I mentioned. But
right, yeah, but like Pizza Tower is just on a whole new level from all these other guys.
Alright, next category is Best Mobile Game, for the best game playable on a mobile device. Our candidates are Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis, developed by Amplibot and published by Square Enix. Hello Kitty Island Adventure, developed by Sunblink and survived by Sunblink Entertainment. Honkai Star Rail, developed and self-published by Hoyoverse. Monster Hunter Now, developed by Niantic and published by Capcom. And Returning Terra Nil, again, developed by Free Lives and published by the Netflix gaming division.
I will say Monster Hunter, the reason why I'm a bit cynical is it's Niantic, and they do have none of their mobile games after Pokemon Go have taken off.
It feels like Pokemon Go was just like an extremely lucky lightning strike.
It came out at the right time, also right enough to kill people, but that's besides the point. Anyway, compared to the previous year, this time at the very least I have something to vote, but I have to argue one or two of these choices really comes out of nowhere. Like, why is the Hello Kitty game here? Is it really that great? I guess it's an Animal Crossing clone, I suppose, but is it really that worthy?
Hello Kitty is really big.
Oh no, I have no doubt that it is. It kind of feels like last year's Marble Snap. The one that actually won, even though it really felt like it didn't even belong in here. I don't know.
That game was fantastic.
I still prefer Contest of Champions overall.
I think the issue with this category is like, well, often they'll go for what's popular, and if they can't fill out with stuff that's popular, they'll just scrape the bottom of the barrel and go, oh, it's a mobile game, and it goes.
Anyway,
it's an Apple Arcade exclusive, in case you're wondering.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, who else is looking forward to Sonic Dream Team being on the list next year?
Well, not me, because I'm not a Sonic fan. Anyway...
And I don't have Apple Arcade.
Okay, Fox and Grapes then. Alright. My vote goes to Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis, as one can expect. I have just started showing it to the others with just one part, but I have to tell you, as someone who has played it since day one, I'm really digging it. Compared to other games similar to it, like Record Keeper and Dissidia Opera Omnia, it sits a bit in the middle when it comes to the how predatory the microtransactions can be. I argue it doesn't really need it. A regular player can just play it, frequently, and the game showers them with enough, currency to perform the pulls that are needed to, boost your characters to progress, It's if you actually care about alternate costumes for the characters that, the offers in the shop might be tempting for you or not. Recently, there's a crossover event with Final Fantasy IX where some characters would get themed costumes, and those are part of it. That's the thing, Dej. It's not like you can actually buy them on the shop. Essentially, if you actually work as the working ant instead of, wasting your currency and keep around enough to invest in your pool, eventually, essentially, you hit a grade sufficient enough for you to actually get a costume, if you want. It's just a matter of, you deciding to spare away the currency that you have and invest that in one pool, with the mentality of these will still come back in the future anyway, so I can try it again another time and just keep this one and wait for another, A person who wants to have a mentality of free-to-play and not wanting to spend a single dime can still enjoy the game, particularly the story, as it's presented on its own, and it's only for the super hardcore content that it might require you to invest money if you really want to, show your dick online or something. Anyway, that's why it gets my vote. Jova?
A prequel or?
It's a compilation into one package. Essentially, it's going to be updated periodically, and it essentially includes the story modes that are supposed to tell the story of each of the major titles in the compilation, including the movie Advent Children, and even some stuff from the novels. So it's a very ambitious. So far, it has been done a decent enough job. So we need to see how they can keep up. I'm easily guessing that they're holding on a lot of stories tied to Final Fantasy VII, waiting for when Rebirth gets released next year, so they can reuse a lot of assets from there, because that's one of the tricks that they use. They recycle a lot of assets from both the Crisis Core remake and remake part 1 in order to have fresh assets, so they don't have to tinker too much with the game.
If I recall correctly, the thing with Ever Crisis is it kind of jumps around on the timeline.
It doesn't jump around. It jumps around only in the way it's presented to you, the player. It's not like there is an in-story framing device of someone reading a book or something. It's just you, the player, viewing these events as they happen. But they're still cataloged in their game section. So if you want to eventually replay them in the actual order that they happen in their own story, you can do that easily.
I guess it's just a matter of waiting until every single section is released.
Which it's gonna be a long while, I have to say.
I see.
Anyway, what is your vote, Jova?
It's a toss-up between Honkai Star Rail and Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis.
Yeah, I actually haven't mentioned that. Much like with Genshin Impact, I'm not really willing in general to vote for anything from Hoyoverse, no matter how many amounts of waifus do you want to put in there.
Is that the game that has the Persona 5 art style? I'm sorry for saying that. And has the Spider-Man swinging?
That's very generalizing, and no, it doesn't.
Maybe I'm thinking of something.
It's the one with the girl with the magenta hair and the business suit called Kafka.
I do recall what Dej is talking about. I'm trying to remember.
It's another game entirely. I don't know which one it is.
Yeah, okay, so you guys know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about, but it's not this one.
I guess I'm gonna give it to Ever Crisis, since Hoyoverse currently have their own controversies and Ever Crisis is the game that appeals to me more anyway.
Dej, what about you?
Yeah, with how you're passionate about Ever Crisis, it's selling me on it.
I can tell you that a PC version is on the horizon and it's still a free-to-play, so, when it comes out, you can play that, I guess.
I'll just put it like this. Ever Crisis, should it make its way to completion, should ideally be the perfect player's guide to Final Fantasy VII.
Think of it as a big encyclopedia, interactive one, at that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, next category is everyone's favorite VR AR for the best game experience playable in virtual or augmented reality in irrespective of platform. We have Gran Turismo 7, developed by Polyfolly Digital and published by Sony Computer Entertainment. Horizon Call of the Mountain, developed by Guerrilla Games and developed also by Firespite and published by Sony Computer Entertainment. Humanity, developed by THA Ltd. And published by Enhanced Games. Resident Evil Village VR mode, developed and published by Capcom. And Synapse, developed and published by N-Dreams. If you forgot, this last one, Synapse, is the one where we're seeing a bunch of state of plays. The one where the guy goes, as the icon shows, in a monochromatic world, and he's mostly a shooter with disemboweled hands. Sorry. So, I honestly don't know what to pick, because, let me put it this way, each of these titles works fine enough as they are when it comes to VR, Gran Turismo 7 had its own set of controversies on its own, but I can tell you that the VR works fine. So for the purpose of this award, it does work fine. Horizon Call of Atlantis was made specifically to be a VR spin-off, so there is that, and it's basically a hunting, similar in the style of the other Horizon games, so it can work out. Humanity is a puzzle, quasi-puzzle RTS because you're controlling these floods of people. I think we saw also that in a State of Play, and you need to, fulfill objectives, kind of like in the Captain Toad video game. Just in this case, it's like the equivalent of moving currents of water, only the water is basically, a flock of people. Resident Evil Village VR is self-explanatory. Capcom has been essentially putting VR mode to recent Resident Evil games since the 2 remake. And Synapse, like I said, so... I guess if I had to vote for something, I'm gonna go with Horizon Call of the Mountain, because it's the one that's technically the most clean out of all of them, and it was built specifically for VR. And I can tell you that from the footage that I've seen, they did a decent enough job with it. So I'm gonna go with that. Jova?
I'll be... For me, it's a toss-up between Resident Evil Village and Humanity. I'll be boring and say Resident Evil Village.
Alright then, Dedge.
Like, it does the job and all that.
Dedge?
I've never played a VR, but you know what? I'll give Resident Evil its flowers.
Alright.
And now you can see Lady D.
Lady Dimitrescu. In full glorious first person, with your very eyeballs. Jova, do you mind doing us the favor and read the next category?
Yes, best action game. For the best game in the action genre focused primarily on combat. Now, shock of all shocks, this might have the most number of newcomers we've seen for a category so far tonight. We've got Armored Core Fires of Rubicon, made from Software and Bandai Namco. Dead Island 2 from Dambuster Studios under Deep Silver. Ghost Runner 2 from One More Level and 505 Games. Hi-Fi Rush from good old Tango Gameworks and Bethesda, and Remnant 2 from Gunfire Games Gearbox Publishing.
First of all, let me preface this because it needs to be said. This is the only category in which Armored Core 6 is nominated.
That's so baffling.
This game is being robbed, and I don't understand why. It really didn't deserve better.
Like, I'm not even the biggest fan of Armored Core 6, and even I'll say, huh? Like, okay, yes, I have to go back to some of my critiques on previous categories, and that they are so homogenous that I think that maybe at this point it's a sign that we need to expand the pool for nominations overall, because seeing games like Armored Core 6 get robbed out of categories it could have gone in is just head-tilting and frustrating, to say the least.
Yeah, especially since it's a FromSoft game and like a lot of people are buying it. This is the first time people have been interested in gamers have been interested in mechs
for a very long while.
Ever.
And again, Armored Core was one franchise that always struggled, particularly during the PS3 era. So it managing to make a spectacular comeback is actually, very appreciative. And they didn't even do the more obvious thing of making, it's Dark Souls but with robots. No, it's still its own identity with the core gameplay of Armored Core. So it's still true to the root of the franchise, and people, respected that. So it did sold well, and it even scored positively with reviews. So the game deserved genuinely better, and instead it's relegated like this, tossed in an angle, like in the corner of a room, like it's fucking trash. No, I won't stand for that.
And not only that, but it has some serious competition with these other games. At the very least, Hi-Fi Rush is incredibly unique as far as action games
I haven't seen much of Ghost Runner 2, but I remember from the trailer that it was promising. Remnant 2 is basically a mix between a dungeon crawler and a roguelike, because you have a lot of floors that you can run into, but they're pre-made, but it's combined that with your traditional third-person shooter / hack and slash, So it has a lot going on, especially in terms of presentation. Dead Island 2 is okay at best. It had a very troubled development cycle, and when it finally got released, not many people were left to care about it, but it's not the worst thing I've seen, so it's okay for it being here. But no, I'm voting Armored Core just because it deserves something, so that's why it gets my vote.
I
Jova.
will say, as much as I do talk about variety and such, I have to give this vote to Hi-Fi Rush again, because Hi-Fi Rush is just that unique, and it was just that much fun for me to play. Like, it's even good for replays too in that regard. And again, this is not a diss to Armored Core 6. It's just Hi-Fi Rush does it for me more.
Dej, what about you?
Give it an Armored Core, man.
Mm-hmm.
Nah. It's FromSoft. So everyone I know loves them, and I've been hearing nothing but praise for Armored Core 6. I want to play it, but I can't for reasons.
The major
yeah.
major problem, unfortunately, of phone software these days is because that they don't really have much of an interest in releasing their old catalog, which they desperately should be needing to make people being exposed to that.
It's more like if people offer them money to do it, they'll do it.
Because
That's
they sell
why
they themselves don't have too much of an interest in the Western audience unless they are something that they know it's bankable, and because of that they self-publish everything in Japan, and they just need to actually make contract with big publisher for Western releases like Activision
it's
for
basically
Sekiro.
how we got Metal Wolf Chaos.
Yeah, with
Now
Digital
what's
Devolver. Yeah.
Now, what's the Game Awards pull a complete curveball and decide to choose neither of these two options?
Again, I just hope it's not Dead Island 2. That's basically my thing.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie.
I
Dead
heard the
Island
game was
2 was
fine.
Like you said, fine, but not deserving of the award. So I don't
honestly,
record,
for as much as I don't like homogenous picks, I'd probably have sooner replaced Dead Island 2 with Spider-Man 2.
That's because instead it's for the next category, Best Action Adventure. For the Best Action Adventure game combining combat with traversal and puzzle solving, we have returning Alan Wake 2, Marvel Spider-Man 2, Resident Evil 4 Remake, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I'll preface this by saying that every one of these in this category is perfectly, on equal footing for one reason or another. So each of them is well deserving of this award. Compared to the previous year, which I remember correctly had a couple of problems. I think Stray was in there, and I wasn't particularly agreeing that because the game did not have that much combat, admittedly. So this is trying to mention combination of combat and puzzle solving, which each of these games tends to have. Alan Wake 2 is a survival horror, but it combines also the gimmick of pointing your flashlight to reveal stuff and, cleanse the darkness from areas and enemies. Marvel Spider-Man 2, of course, employs different types of, gameplays and gimmicks in order for let you do both puzzle solving and, proper CQC combat. Resident Evil 4 is kind of similar to Alan Wake 2, and as a staple of Resident Evil, it incorporates puzzles properly. Star Wars Jedi Survivor might be the weakest out of these because it is more focused on the hack and slash with lightsaber, but it does feature its fair share of type of puzzle solving for Cal Kestis to resolve. But I have to go when it comes to votes for Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I think out of all of these, it encapsulates the concept of this award at its very core and the most out of these. So I think it's well deserved for this one. Java.
Minecraft.
Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Balls.
I'm gonna go with Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom because there's so much creativity in how you can traverse. Have you seen people who essentially made B-52 bombers in that game?
They also arrange the stones so they make it sound, what's it called? A music box version of Megalovania when moving the contraption.
I love music, don't you?
Da-da-da-da.
I mean, hey, now the
Tears of
Pope.
Kingdom.
I mean, hey, now the Pope can enjoy even Tears of the Kingdom with his favorite tune. I love how that is now a reality, that the Pope is aware
We
of
live in the
Megalovania.
worst timeline.
I'm going to destroy Matt Pat. His career.
Sorry, Dad, you cannot. He managed to get in a cameo in the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. He's basically untouchable now. Anyway,
That will be
I'm wasting my
What-
time here. I should be a
next
YouTuber.
category, and I have to I'm slightly happy to report it's not any this year at the very least. It's not the trash bin of the Game Awards, because we don't really have games that haven't been nominated for anything else in Trust year, aside from one exception. I will get to that in a second. But the categories are returning: Baldur's Gate 3, Final Fantasy 16, Lies of P, Sea of Stars, and the only newcomer and the only award in which this is nominated to, Starfield, developed by Bethesda and self-published by Bethesda and consequentially Microsoft.
Am I the only one who just finds it weird that Starfield, for all the hype that was surrounding it, when it came out, it was like ground zero. Oh, sure. There were people who definitely had fun and were talking about it, but it was like just, hey, it's there. It exists.
I can tell you it had good sales, and it also boosted the Game Pass, its subscriptions. So it still did its job. No, it's okay, Joe. To be fair, just because it's not really that much heard, or you haven't heard of it, that doesn't mean it hasn't happened.
That wasn't what I was getting at. It's just like, well, I just find it weird that there hasn't really been that big a fanfare of it. Like, I do acknowledge that it did its job, and good on it for that. But it's weird. Normally with Bethesda games, you hear something big, whether it's good or
not
bad.
Not necessarily. I think it's on par with what happened with Fallout 4, which was, on par of the course. It's basically...
Yeah, I heard that. I've been told that this is better than Fallout 4.
Basically, it's very as basic as, Bethesda fan base is very... has been very stable since the days of Morrowind and Oblivion, and as such has been, basically on the same level and mostly on PC. This is also why the new release games tend to not make too much of a notice unless they are catastrophic, like Fallout 76, because most of the fan base essentially just plays them around on PC and that's it. So when this, despite everything, still came out, sure, some influencers, talked about it and they might have said they'd been turned off, but the vast majority of people basically just played it and, encountered the usual thing that happens with Bethesda games. The story is okay at best, not the most Shakespearean kind of thing. You have celebrity cameos, there are a lot of bizarre bugs that probably will be fixed with mods or patches, but people still had a good time overall. I'm still
from what I looked at the Starfield Reddit when they were talking about they get nominated for Game of the Year or many awards, they're like, yeah, I'm not surprised, honestly. I enjoyed my time with it, but it's like yeah, there were better games.
I argue it's in the complete wrong kind of category. Like, sure, it does have progression elements, but Starfield is more of a first-person shooter than an RPG on exploration. It probably should be more in, action-adventure, in the action-adventure category.
That's the vibe I get from Fallout as well sometimes. It's like, this looks more like a shooter.
Remind me, did the Game Awards have an open-world games category?
No.
Nope, because Ubisoft would win every year.
I really wanted to vote Lies of P, because, again, my enjoyment for that game is really, prevalent. Sea of Stars is also a good contender, like you said, a good, throwback. Final Fantasy 16, in all consciousness, I probably cannot vote. I don't think it's, as bad as the internet is trying to make it up to be. But it is true that it removes a lot of RPG elements compared to its predecessor titles.
Yeah,
people even made the joke that God of War Ragnarok is more of an RPG than this game.
Like, I have friends who straight up love this game and really enjoy it. It's like, yeah, this isn't an RPG. I'm sorry.
And let me put it in the simplest way. I get it, but it's not for this award. So if I had to think more objectively, I have to still vote Baldur's Gate 3, because, as an RPG, it provides, the most kind of options in terms of customizing your character, giving their kind of career, the kind of class they want to be, the party members you get, the type of adventure that you will have. It's really a more complete package than any of his other titles, so it kind of rightfully deserves that. So, as much as I wanted to vote for Lies of P or Sea of Stars, I have to go with Baldur's Gate 3. Jova.
Yeah.
For me, so you're more versed into this.
Soulsborne games considered RPGs?
Action RPGs, yes.
Okay.
An action
Java.
RPG is still an RPG. You know, it's funny how you and me think similarly with these, because Liza P was also one I was considering because, again, I wanted to maybe try and spread the variety around.
It also deserves it. Let me put it this way. I've played a couple of Souls clone, but again, Lies of P so far to me is the one that deserves it the most out of them.
Let me put it like this. If Baldur's Gate 3 weren't here, it would easily go to Liza P.
Yeah.
Like, even with how good Sea of Stars is, Liza P is
That being said,
marvelous.
Star Ocean, the second story R, came out just in time to be qualified, and you didn't put it there because...
This is what I mean. It's like you should have waited a month before.
Again, there's also the elephant in the room that we mentioned on Super Mario RPG, the remake, that also really should be here as well.
It better be there next year.
I would also say Octopath Traveler 2 because so many people I know love that game.
Okay, look.
It's like, oh man,
like
this is a really great game.
Like I said, one, Super Mario RPG better be on the list next year unless there's like just amazing RPG after amazing RPG. And two, I really think that these nominee pools should be expanded at this point, because if you're getting to the point where they're this homogenous and clear contenders are getting left out, maybe something needs to change, just saying. But yeah, no, like, easily my choice goes to Baldur's Gate 3. And that is not a knock against Lies of P or Sea of Stars. And yeah, Final Fantasy 16, you are a good game, but RPG-wise, you don't have all the stuff. And Starfield, you're doing fine in your life, bud. Hang in there.
What about you,
no,
Dad?
Baldur's Gate 3 is just the full package.
From an observation standpoint, like, yeah, I've mentioned, we've talked about Final Fantasy 16. Isn't really an RPG, but it's, for what I've been told, a really great game.
It works more like, it works exactly like a game that done by the gameplay designer of Devil May Cry 5 would make for Final Fantasy. Again, the best thing that I can say to sum up the problem that I have with the gameplay of Final Fantasy 16 can be summed up with a single phrase. I would have absolutely no problems if this was a spin-off and not a mainline title. Call it call it Type Zero, for example.
No. Strangers of Paradise?
Yeah, kind of like that. If it wasn't for the fact it's connected to Final Fantasy 1, Stranger of Paradise probably would be a better Final Fantasy 16 than this, I argue.
Damn.
Yeah.
The moral ones once again.
I see where
Jack,
he's coming from,
what can I say,
honestly.
Dad? I respect Jack's strength.
So, what's your pick, Dej?
Everyone tells me Lies of P is like finally the true successor to Bloodborne.
Mm-hmm. I still don't understand what the P stands for, though.
Yeah, potassium.
I thought it was Schlong.
Yeah, I'm gonna. We all know that Baldur's Gate 3 is gonna win this, but you know what? I'm gonna root for the little guy and say Sea of Stars.
Okay, fair enough. While you're at it,
bold
Dej,
decision.
Do you want to read the next category since it's one of your favorites, and this time they actually respected a bit more?
Yeah, I feel like they got my severed head packages in the mail this time.
Go on.
I mean,
goody.
Best fighting game for the best game designed primarily around head-to-head combat. God of Rock by Modbus Studios, Brazil, Modbus Games. Mortal Kombat 1. Not the one from the 90s, the new one. Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2, which literally came out last week.
Yeah, no, that's what I was referring to, Edge. Like, I don't even know what's the quality of the story mode that it has.
From what I've heard, it's actually a pretty good game. Like, okay, it had roster issues, but to give it credit, it seems to have made up for those roster issues with pretty good content, a great fighting system, a surprisingly good story campaign. You even get some unique dialogue for characters.
And from what I understand, most of that is voiced.
Yes.
Yeah,
Like they fixed
so
all the problems right out of the gate from the first game.
again, the only
So
problem is
if
the
the first
roster stuff and the costume packages and
like
all
if
that
the
jazz.
first game was Smash 64, from what I'm getting, it's Melee.
Mixed with a
'Cause,
bit of
like,
brawl, I guess.
Yeah, and it also has a budget this time. Pocket Bravery by Stateria Studio. Oh, and Street Fighter 6.
I'll
AKA
admit,
apparently allegedly the first good fighting game since Street Fighter 3 Third Strike.
Yeah,
I'll
this is also
admit,
why it's getting my vote. Street Fighter 6 out of all of these probably is the one that I enjoy the most. Mortal Kombat 1 has a part of a charm to it, but not enough for me to get my vote. I don't know almost anything about God of Rock, so I cannot really tell. Same goes for
I
Pocket
heard
Bravery.
I heard God of Rocket. It's a rhythm fighting game, but it's not as fleshed out as it should be.
I'll be
Uh,
honest, I kind of forgot God of Rock was a thing. It's been a while, and I don't think
Yeah.
we've gotten much update to
And
it since
Nickelodeon
its
Star Brawl
release.
just literally just came out, so I don't know enough for me to judge it. So out of all of these, I will say Street Fighter 6 because it seems also a game that people are enjoying. The only major accident is what happened with the collaboration of TMNT, and even then it's basically just costumes. So I really don't give a shit. Even for a franchise, I personally don't have much attachment to. So when it comes to the actual gameplay, the character models and everything, the score, the game options and everything, the game modes. People seem to have generally a good time, and we have a solid schedule planned for future content anyway. So cool enough. Gets my vote. Jova.
I'm gonna say Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2, and trust me, I was not expecting this, because again, look, the lead up to the game was a bit rough with the roster stuff, kind of similar to another crossover fighting game. The difference being, though, this one actually did have stuff to make up for the roster, and to give them credit, they did also make some pretty neat additions, they added in Jimmy Neutron. They gave us Azula, and somebody on the team must be a big Avatar fan because the DLC is including
We're getting Zuko and Iroh. Yeah.
Although they removed Toph, so we're sans an Earthbender, which is a weird omission.
Jova, we also had the two of the TMNT that were missing from the first game, but they removed the two that were there. I don't understand why we cannot have a game with all four TMNT in them.
Especially since let me get into this. The reason why they chose the 80s version is because yes, that's the one they grew up with, and from a developer's mentality, you can reuse the assets.
Okay.
Also, Shredder was DLC in the previous game,
and we're getting
he's a boss fight.
We're getting Rocksteady as a DLC. It feels so random.
Without Bebop.
I'd rather they would have given us Karai if that was the case.
Or Casey Jones, my favorite.
Let me put it like this. This choice does not come lightly because under normal circumstances, the roster stuff would have been a huge disqualifier. But to give it credit, from what I have seen, this might be the first platform fighter that legit can say it can go toe-to-toe with Smash and not just be Joshin. Because it actually does have a pretty good fighting system, good variety in the characters, a good story campaign, which is spread out across these characters in a sense and gives unique dialogue for each of them in one that is voiced. And to be fair, yeah, this roster is not exactly Smash Bros. Ultimate levels, but again, if they were to build off of this formula and just keep adding to the roster without making dump cuts and have better thought out rosters, this might legit be the first platform fighter to say it can go toe-to-toe with Smash, and trust me, that's not a small feat, because we've seen this song and dance before, and it tends to fall short here or there, but Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2 is legit a great game and experience. Also, it has crossplay. That's a plus. But yeah, NASB2 for me.
Tej, what about you?
I hate that I haven't played any fighting game this year. But
wow,
from what
really?
I've seen...
Dej, just be glad that we don't have any beat 'em up this time around.
Oh God, that was
Hey, remember the
Sequel last
Multiverses one last year?
Again, they still
Oof.
again. I will mention this back when we talk about trailer prediction, but the game is supposed to be launched next year, so I am hoping we're getting a trailer this time around.
But everything,
Multiverses.
I'm gonna give it to Street Fighter 6 on the principle of this is a comeback story for Capcom. They peaked with when it came to fighting games. Let's be real, in terms of presentation and everything, it was Ultimate versus Capcom 3. They stumbled
Yes.
with Tekken Cross Street Fighter. They stumbled with Street Fighter 5. Remember that didn't launch with an arcade mode. And as much as I've come around to MVCI, like from a gameplay standpoint, let's be real, they were given the developers were given a bad hand.
Oh
But
no,
ever
like
since-
they pretty much have come out clear about that.
Yeah, but ever since Ono left Capcom, I've noticed that their fighting game division has been firing all cylinders. Like Street Fighter 5 got better during the pandemic. I know that
Nope.
Street Fighter 6 had some development issues, which is why Street Fighter 5 had an extra season of content for that
Mhm.
reason. But everything I've seen with Street Fighter 6, it just hits all the right bars.
Let's just
minus its music. And Capcom finally did the impossible. They made a new main character that's actually likable. But that's mostly because of Luke's voice actor.
Yeah,
For a moment, I thought you were gonna joke.
the guy is
Sorry.
genuinely actually wholesome enough to also, interact with the fans, enjoy getting into this role, and even dubbing fan content out of his own free will.
For a moment, Des, I thought you were gonna joke and say you were referring to the character Avatar, which oh boy, some of the
We will get to that when we get to the section titled multiplayer, Jova. Don't worry. Also, just to give two examples for Street Fighter 6. One, they managed to finally get a decent design and dignity to DJ. Took them long enough to do that. And second, me and Edge are superior intellectual being, and as such appreciate a game that gives us, such people to enjoy and respect, such as Jurian and Aki.
Yep.
And Chun-Li's big thighs.
I'm guessing.
I still wish her costume had a better coloring, but yeah, the model is. I still like the model.
Yeah, from what I've witnessed, people are enjoying Jurihan's default costume here more than her default costume in 5.
I like all of them, but
Yeah, I like all of them.
like there were problems. What happened, Joe, is that the costume from 5 was supposed to show a bit more of skin, but was purposely censored because it was during that kind of period of gaming. So almost out of spite, we included it here, but as originally intended. Like, I love how a lot of games today want to be more, puritanical about their way. And here comes the Street Fighter 5, with its kind of fan service. I can bet your ass that the people at Tecmo Koei, the people making Dead or Alive, are biting their hands right now because of this. Because they were like, fuck, we screwed this up.
Don't worry. I'm sure it'll come back soon.
And I mean, I don't even care. I play Dead or Alive to play as Ryu Hayabusa anyway, so what the fuck do I know?
Yeah. Yeah, because I heard 6 got screwed over hard.
Mm-hmm. Again, yeah, go on.
Well, from my like everything I've seen about Street Fighter 6, like, wow, this game, you did it, Capcom. You bounced back. The only negative thing I can fully comment on is the music. What happened there?
Like I said, also the monetization of the crossover with the TMNT was a bit wonky in how they handled it. But like I said, I personally just don't care for overall being something that I not attached to that. But I get the idea that if you're a TMNT fan, you might be a bit disappointed at the very least.
Man, that's the second disappointing TMNT crossover.
Yeah, I knew we were going to mention that. Apparently, IDW had also a crossover comic, which is not really that good. Speaking of something that's not really that good, the next category is your favorite. Do you mind?
Yeah, the family game award.
Yeah, again, not best family game, best family.
Best family. For the best game appropriate for family play, irrespective of genre or platform. AKA, this is basically, hey guys, this is where we put Nintendo games on. Just like how the
Except
Oscars
only 2 of these are Nintendo games.
the Disney Illusion Island is exclusive to Switch at the time of this recording.
Yeah, but it's not published by Nintendo.
Yeah, true. Disney Illusion Island by Delilah Studios, the guys who made Battletoads 2020, and Disney. Party Animals by Recreate Games. Pikmin 4 by Nintendo EPD, published by Nintendo. Sonic Superstars by RSS, Sonic Team, and Sega. And Super Mario Bros. Wonder by Nintendo EPD/Nintendo. Wow, EPD is on a roll this year.
What a shock. I called it that Super Mario Bros. Wonder would be here.
I mean, that to be expected. That being said, if I want to be technical and apply to the criteria of the award, I kind of would have to vote for Party Animals because it's exactly the kind of game that it's enjoyable by the entire family. It's a multiplayer-focused game. We have seen in a couple of Nintendo Directs and State of Plays that as your characters having an animal costume of some kind and fucking around in a map doing moving almost in a catatonic state when you're supposed to use tools to beat each other up. It's a kind of like a 3D brawl arena, but with a lot of wonky physics, kind of like a bit like Fall Guys a bit. So it really is a game designed for multiplayer and particularly for a younger audience, so this really kind of fits the best family. Disney Illusion Island is a Rayman Origin/Legend clone, meaning that
Metroidvania.
Which means it's probably more suited for a teenager demographic and not really something that you play with the whole family. Sonic Superstar multiplayer is laughable from what I've been told, so not exactly something you enjoy with the whole family.
It's not terrible.
Pikmin 4 is just basically if I recall correctly, Pikmin 4 does Pikmin 4 has co-op?
Sort of, but it kind of feels like the Co-Star mode in Galaxy 2.
Okay.
But there is a multiplayer versus mode.
Fair enough. I guess that will also fit, but that's not the primary focus. Same goes for Super Mario Bros. Wonder. It has the classic multiplayer that we've seen with the new Super Mario Bros. But and that probably would be qualifiable too. But you can tell it's not designed with that being its primary function. Again, if Party Animals,
they fixed something for the major with that, and that's. You can't bump into anybody anymore.
Huh. Interesting. I remember the direct where they mentioned also about the other multiplayer functionality, but that's more for multiplayer and playing with the whole family. That's what I'm getting from the technicality of this award. So I guess I have to vote for Party Animals, but if Party Animals was not here, I probably would vote for Mario Wonder. But anyway.
All right, Joe. Well, let's be real. You're gonna choose for Sonic Superstars.
Sonic Superstars.
Yeah, I was like, you can't.
I mean, okay, look. If the game were actually bad, I wouldn't choose it. Like, if it were like, an absolute mess, I wouldn't. But no, like, warts and all, Sonic Superstars is a good game. It does have issues, but I'd say it's a good game, and it did deserve its place here. Like, it's now I'm not expecting it to win. But I'm going to vote for it. And you know what? Good on RSS. You finally made a good game after some...
Yeah, that's kind of sad.
Not after some not so great games. And it's funny. It took the lead guy coming back to Sonic after Bow and Wonderworld.
Also, apparently you can make a nice Nights into Dreams, robot for multiplayer purposes. So
yes, that is cool. Like, I'd argue the multiplayer is fine in that game. It's not stellar, but I never found it terrible.
Oh, yeah, I've seen Let's Plays of that multiplayer.
The only primo reference that I have is someone called me Johnny's review, and it was not very flattering to the game as a whole.
They're currently uploading their Superstars LP on SGB. This is the most negative I've seen Johnny in a very long time.
To be fair, Bayonetta 3 was not that long ago, the Edge.
Yeah,
Well, I'm talking about in terms of playing not a review, playing a game, let's play of a game.
Okay, I don't follow that much on that front.
But yeah, I'm gonna go with Superstars.
What about you, Dej?
Well, we
Wonder.
already choosing Mario Wonder. Let's not kid
Yep.
ourselves here. Come on.
And now it's time to put on our thinking caps as we strategize what is the best choice for best sim strategy, the best game focused on real-time or turn-based simulation or strategy gameplay, irrespective of platform. We have Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp from WayForward and Nintendo, Cities Skylines 2 from Colossal Order or Paradox Interactive, Company of Heroes Free from Relic Entertainment under Sega. We have Fire Emblem Engage from Intelligent Systems / Nintendo. And we have
Returning.
Pikmin 4.
Returning.
Once again, returning.
Again, it is an
Nintendo
RTS,
EDD.
arguably, so, I think it makes sense.
Wow, there are 3 Nintendo games in this.
There are
They've
more
had
Nintendo games here within the family category. Wow.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Don't at me for this, but anyone else feel like Fire Emblem Engage could have been replaced with a more deserving bout here?
It is still a
Like
strategy
what?
game of some kind, so I will say this. The problem that people have when it comes to Engage is mostly just the character design, because even the plot is not even, this kind of garbage. If anything, people tell it's a better, more refined version of Fate's plot, which says a lot.
I thought
Wow,
that
that
was
does
3 houses.
say
That was
that.
more the fun. Better the fun.
No. Like, free. Well, I mean, the only main similarity between Free Houses and Fates I can recall
Also,
is, like,
that would
multiple
be
endings, maybe.
the Warriors, the Fire Emblem Warriors recent title, centered around 3 houses, which is a better version of the main game.
So, in that regard, though,
What would be my vote? I guess I'm gonna go with Pikmin 4, because aside from the fact that, it generally is a good, strategy game, Fire Emblem Engage is just fine, but like I said, the character design, and arguably also the voice acting and some questionable gameplay elements, do technically hamper it a bit down. I don't know much about Company of Heroes 3 specifically. I know what the previous titles were, but I don't know about this one recently, so I cannot tell. I do know that Relic Entertainment as a studio kind of fell down a bit in recent years in terms of quality, so I don't know actually what this is like. Who knows? Same City Skylines, we did saw a couple of trailers in the past. It's a good enough city builder, but nothing more than that. If you're into that kind of thing, it's kind of like Microsoft Flight Simulator. It's just a thing to chillax, just, being very chillax. And Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp was supposed to come out a year ago, so it feels kind of cheating to be putting up there just because it was delayed and eventually came out now. I don't know. Like, again, I think Pikmin 4 overall is the one that's more balanced and with more of an edge towards all of them. Jova?
I'm gonna go with Advance Wars 1+2. Like, I mean, I know there are the whole delay aspect with it, but I don't think that should disqualify it, because I feel like it still is a great remake / game, and WayForward really show that they can do their stuff here. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Advance Wars. Dej,
Dej.
what about you?
This is tough because on one hand, I want to vote for Advance Wars because of how this franchise is cursed. And it's like, it deserves something. On the other hand, I've heard from my friends who have played Engage, like, oh yeah, this game is good. And apparently the game is hinting at a remake for Fire Emblem 4, which has been rumored for a while, especially since one of the main characters of that game is a major player in this. So it's like, But then, Pikmin 4 also deserves something.
Yeah, especially considering how long it took for it to, being developed and come out, considering the restarting development at some point.
Yeah, because they changed engines. It was supposed to be on the Pikmin 3 engine, and they changed it to Unreal 4. I'll give it to Engage.
Alright, fair enough. Next is sports versus sports racing for the best traditional and non-traditional sports and racing games. We have not FIFA, it's called properly EA Sports FC 24 from EA
Oh, yeah, is
Vancouver,
that after
published by EA
FIFA
Sport.
finally pulled out of the
Yeah.
license from EA?
Well, it's more like EA decided to pull out because FIFA was asking more money, Jova. Like, you have to understand which of the two evil is the bigger one in this context.
Wow.
Then we have F123, developed by Codemasters and published by EA Sports, returning for some motorsport from before. And the other two new ones are Hot Wheels Unleashed 2 Turbocharged, developed and published by Milestone, and The Crew Motorfest, developed by Ubisoft Ivory Tower and published by Ubisoft, of course.
I'm gonna admit, I completely lost track of The Crew.
In true tradition of a lot of Ubisoft, recent IPs, it's a bore fest, but it manages to capture its own fan base that are just into that kind of thing. But normally, it's just a snore fest, particularly to me, and I like good on them, but I don't really see the appeal. Sorry. And that reflects also for voting in this. I'm gonna go with Forza Motorsport because similar to when I mentioned that in the accessibility, section, I think this is, kind of, a bit passing over when it really has probably, one of the more merit. Maybe Hot Wheels Unleashed 2, but I don't know. Like it feels it's a bit more mindless, that one. So I'd rather take, instead Forza Motorsport out of these. Obviously, I'm not even counting the EA titles. I'm sorry for Codemasters, because they normally are good at racing games, but I know for a fact that, under EA, it's only a matter of time before their quality starts to decline anyway. So there is that. Drova.
I'm gonna go with Hot Wheels Unleashed 2 Turbocharged. Like, I feel like it's actually the game that's the most unique of these, and arguably the most fun in that regard. Like, and you know what? This might just come all down to personal preference, because if you like soccer games, well, likely EA Sports is going to win your vote out of this list. Because...
Yeah, that's also the thing. There's only one actual sport game, as in, human doing stuff on foot sport, and all the others are racing of some kind.
Like, I'm sorry, were there not enough sports games so that we could have had,
I'm pretty sure
on-foot
there
sports
was,
and racing sports be different categories?
Okay, to be fair, I think the other major releases were the one from 2K, and if I recall correctly, they are not really that optimal, so maybe it's because of that. I guess.
Maybe, I guess. Like, but yeah, I'm gonna go with Hot Wheels Unleashed 2 Turbocharged. It had all those cool features, making your own tracks, and the car designs are nice, No, like, more Hot Wheels, that's good. As long as it stays good in quality. Dedge.
Can I just say that I hate this category because it's like...
I think you did something
Welcome to the club,
I think you did something similar to last year, and just like last year, I'm gonna tell you, just pick randomly if you can't.
No, it's more of the sports game. Yeah, there's sports games, and then there's racing. They should be two separate categories instead of combining them. Alright, so from what I've heard, the new Forza game wasn't good. It was a step down from the previous one. So everyone's a bit worried about the future of the franchise for some reason, but I haven't heard anything about the Crew Motorsport. Or actually, I don't hear much people talk about the Crew.
Like I said, Edge, it's generally considered just boring at best, and people don't understand why Ubisoft is keeping it alive.
Like, from what I can recall, the appeal of the Crew back when it was good was essentially the idea that, it combined immersive racing in all these different environments with the cool customization. I don't recall if it had a story campaign.
No, it was essentially the Need for Speed or Burnout that EA wasn't making at the time.
I guess now, thanks to there being more competition and Ubisoft being Ubisoftish about it, it hasn't exactly been in its prime.
Alright, Dad, just give us your vote, please.
I heard the new EA Sports game is good. Like, oh, yeah, even though it's just FIFA, it shows, wow, you actually didn't need the name in order to sell. So, that's funny.
You have to understand, Edge, that there's a fuck ton of countries, including particularly in Europe and South America, who literally buy a console just for FIFA, or in this case, this equivalent, this new naming equivalent, and nothing else. They literally just play one game, and that's it.
Yeah, I know. I have cousins from England and Nigeria, so I know exactly what that's like.
It's insane.
Yeah, I mean, last gen, people said last gen sucked because we didn't have a new GTA or Elder Scrolls game, so it'd be like a, you know, I'm gonna give it to Hot Wheels.
Alright, then.
Wait, did Gran Turismo 7 come out this
last year?
Was...
It was actually nominated, if I recall correctly, last year. If I recall correctly, we didn't count it for best ongoing support. For this reason. Wow. Anyway, speaking of something that's a primary function of Gran Turismo 7, the next category is Best Multiplayer, sponsored by Discord. We haven't even encountered one of these sponsored by this year, so it took them long to show up. For outstanding online multiplayer, gameplay and design, including co-op and massively multiplayer experience, irrespective of game genre and platform. Returning, all of them, we have Baldur's Gate 3, once again, Diablo 4, Party Animals, Street Fighter 6, and Super Mario Bros. Wonder. I'm pretty confident that all of these, are perfectly qualifiable for this award, just in their own way. Yes, even Diablo 4. I know it's hip to shit on, Blizzard these days for everything they did because of that BlizzCon. But I can tell you that Diablo 4, especially in its multiplayer, is still solid enough, especially compared to how Diablo 3 was at launch. God, that was rough. But I'm gonna go with my vote to Street Fighter 6. Simply put, Party Animals could come really close for the same reason that I mentioned during the family, category about being a fun experience for everyone involved and being very focused on multiplayer. But Street Fighter 6 introduces a pivotal, option for you to do compared to its previous, titles in the series, particularly also for the multiplayer. Your avatar character. And you can do a lot of things with your avatar character, and as a result, you can find easily on YouTube videos talking about the lobbies of multiplayer of Street Fighter V with characters of all the shapes, size, and colors facing each other, Similar to how Tekken 7 did something like this for its multiplayer, and we got stuff like, the video of Joel from Vinesauce cosplaying a Skeletor and throwing a pizza at He-Man, stuff like that. So it's a really fun component that I think deserves to be rewarded compared to everything else. So I'm gonna go with this, with Street Fighter 6. Jova.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, each of these are fine. That said, I'm gonna give Super Mario Bros. Wonder some love here since I don't think I've given it a vote before. Again, Baldur's Gate 3, Party Animals, Street Fighter 6, and Wonder all have great attributes that definitely have deserved them a spot on this list. I'll go Super Mario Bros. Wonder. It's not the way we wanted multiplayer to come, but it is actually a pretty good and innovative way, especially to prevent griefing.
It's also more friendly than the one of the new Super Mario Bros. Games, technically. It also has, despite not really having the online co-op option, it gives that kind of silhouette thing that allows you some stuff like time trial comparison, similar to what Crash Team Racing did.
All right, Dej.
Dej.
Well, I always feel like the best type of multiplayer games are the ones that are party games. So I'll give it to Party Animals. I was gonna say give it Mario Wonder, but I'm like, because I do like, from what I've seen, the online stuff where people are, for the first time in a Nintendo game, helpful. Actually want to help you out instead of being dicks.
Like Jova said, griefing.
Yeah. So I'll give it to Party Animals. Surprised Sonic Superstars wasn't on this, because it's technically a multiplayer game.
Well, I haven't heard, very much positive things about this multiplayer.
Yep.
While you're at it, Dej, do you mind reading the next category?
Of course. Best oh goddamn. Best adaptation.
I'm surprised you didn't see that coming.
Recognizing outstanding creative work that faithfully and authentically adapts a video game to another entertainment medium.
Literally the first option, Dad.
Castlevania Nocturne, Project 51
Much like
Netflix.
last year's Wing and a Miss Game Awards in terms of fitting the description, but go on.
Gran Turismo, PlayStation Productions / Sony Pictures. The Last of Us, PlayStation Productions / HBO. The Super Mario Brothers movie, Illumination, Nintendo Universal Pictures. Twisted Metal, PlayStation Productions, Peacock.
Okay, let's go.
Those are certainly adaptations.
Well, let's start with the obvious one because again, let's be real. We all know that The Last of Us is gonna win because people, as soon as it came out, people immediately knew this is what is gonna happen. So let's remove that nail out of the slab with Flash immediately.
I will say, to be fair, this is a case where I could at least see a decent argument being made for the Last of Us case. Like, for one thing, it did actually do some interesting things with the adaptation. The casting was on point, the acting was great, the writing was also pretty good for it. It did make some changes that some people argue actually even improved on the original Last of Us narrative. So I would not be mad if Last of Us won. Like, I know why it probably would win.
The thing to me is that it basically plays on easy mode because, the original product, it has its cutscene, and gameplay, moments structured alike if you're actually watching a movie. So, again, it's a good accomplishment, the fact that they managed to recreate a lot of the scenes from the game 1-to-1. They did manage to try to stay as faithful as possible, despite some behind the scenes that would have suggested otherwise. So I'm commending that. But like I said, it's kind of like the people who make Unfriended complimenting themselves of their innovative filming technique when what they really did is something very easy to achieve.
I would say I don't think that should disqualify Last of Us because it was a legit good adaptation. Even if it was kind of easy mode, I can respect that they did add some new changes to mix things up.
Also, you two are the Sonic fans. Can you tell me why Sonic Prime is not in this?
Because it's not season one's. I was gonna say season one's not finished yet, but
didn't season 2 came out this year?
Yeah.
The thing is, Netflix is doing that stupid thing they do where they split an actual season into seasons. So I do wonder.
Castlevania Nocturne is here as well.
Well, to be fair, it's a standalone season on its own. Speaking of, while you're thinking about this, let me talk also of the other, because I honestly think overall this time around is a bit of a barren wasteland when it comes to voting for me. Castlevania Nocturne, what I don't think it's, as abysmal as a lot of people have pointed out to be on the internet, I think it's just not really worthy of this, award. Like, let me put it this way, you're making an adaptation of Rondo Blood, and you don't have Shaft in it for some reason?
Because he was in the previous series.
I recycle him.
He was?
I've seen stupider.
Yeah, apparently.
I've seen stupider excuses to bring back a character from the dead. Jesus
Not
Christ!
Only that, speaking of bringing characters back from the dead, I don't know who thought it was a good idea to essentially take Trevor Belmont from the original series and put him in Richter's clothes.
That's my biggest complaint about this. That's not Richter. You just made Trevor light.
Yeah, like, he swears like Trevor. He's got the same issues as Trevor overall. Like, that's...
I'd like to remind you that the person that he did this is currently making a Devil May Cry adaptation. And he has that has been in the works since 2018.
Yeah. Apparently, Addy isn't really involved in this because he's more focused on the Ubisoft stuff,
Actually, that's a good reason. Why wasn't the Blood Dragon adaptation in this?
Yeah, why is Gran Turismo here?
Okay, I was about to get to that. Gran Turismo, it's not technically okay. It's an adaptation, yes, but on a broader sense of the term, because the games do not have a story. So instead, as we mentioned a few times in the past, it's an adaptation of real-life event that involved someone deeply involved in playing the game. The problem that I do have with the Gran Turismo movie is that they do actually use one particular event from the real life of this person, which did involve the death of a bystander, and they kind of do a bit of, emotional manipulation with it, which is not really reflective of what the real-life event did. I will save the details if, my group gets to actually commented on the movie at some point. Needless to say, it's a bit, poor in taste. Not enough for the material for the award. Yes, Jova.
I wonder also if they're going strictly off the term adaptation.
Well,
like,
if it was
has
like
to be
that,
at the-
Jova, they wouldn't even qualify, have the movie being qualified here.
Well, I was more so getting into why they chose ones here, okay, to be fair, Gran Turismo is based off of a real story involving Gran Turismo, so
Yeah.
technically, I guess it is an adaptation.
Like I said,
in that
yes, I can
regard.
understand that. The reason why I'm not voting it is because something they do with the story in it. I
Well,
haven't.
that's perfectly fine. I'm just trying to rationalize why certain things are here while others aren't, because technically Sonic Prime, I guess, is not adapting any Sonic plot or something. Although then
Prime is
again,
but it's still a Sonic cartoon at the
Yeah.
end of the day. So that one feels more qualified than Gran Turismo.
I agree. And say what you will about Sonic Prime, but it has been
I
doing
realize
numbers.
that.
It certainly has been getting people talking, and a lot have been watching. It's not even like, that series is some unknown thing hidden in the shadows. Like, do you wonder if maybe this is the Game Awards trying to be more like the Oscars in that regard?
Well, they've been for other categories. Speaking of, let me continue with the other nominees. I haven't seen much of the Twisted Metal series, so I cannot, in all honesty, judge it. I heard a few minor people would tell me they actually enjoyed it, but I cannot tell if they're to be trusted or not.
I listened to a podcast about it, and they said the Twisted Metal thing does the Netflix thing of, the first season is building up to the why
no,
you're
it's
here.
the surfing Dracula meme again.
Yeah.
But it actually does it great because there's still heavy Twisted Metal elements in it where you see characters from the games and they're building up to the tournament next season. So they're still like, that cool thing that you can do in Twisted Metal, it's in this. So it's just them basically introducing us to the characters, so when we get to the tournament.
Anyway, that leads me to talk about also the Super Mario Bros. Movie, which has been polarizing to say the least, in a sense that a lot of people seem to enjoy it almost to a fault, as in trying to be assholes on Twitter, which, for the record, you really shouldn't try to if you enjoy this movie. But honestly, I give it a try on my own, and I think it's okay, but I don't know.
You're a lot nicer than Neil Dash. He said it's the worst movie he's ever seen.
Well, to be fair, again, I'm not. First of all, I'm not him. But let me put it this way: I'm glad that our predictions video did not really came to pass, because I genuinely was expecting a far worse scenario coming from Illumination. So at the very least, I'm glad that they actually tried to stay on course. Especially, we do know from the composer that he tried to fight tooth and nail against Universal to try to minimize the licensed songs and instead to put actual video game songs in it. Which the mere fact alone that a composer has to fight, a movie corporation because otherwise they want to make a couple more bucks because relatable pop song. Which was one of the things that I was actually dreading for.
The climax was originally going to be Jump.
Yeah.
Okay. To be specific, it was apparently going to be a remix of Jump in a more Mario guise. So I might have liked to have seen if that would have turned out if they were going to make Jump more Mario sounding esque. That being said, we lost a legit good tune in favor of Take On Me. Don't get me wrong, Take On Me is a great song, but when you actually hear what they replaced,
not to mention, I argue it really wasn't fitting with what the movie was going for at the moment. It really just felt like, we wanted the audience of Guardians of the Galaxy. Speaking of which, Chris Pratt as Mario is still not convincing to me in the slightest.
He's fine.
No, he's not. He's severely not to me. I'm sorry. Like, I don't think. Okay, to answer what the thing that we speculated in the video that we did for prediction, no, I have to agree that maybe Charles Martin would not be able to carry the entire movie, especially nowadays, knowing what he has to be passing this time around, the fact that he generally cannot keep up and had to find a replacement. But I don't know. I think someone
They
better
had
could have
Danny
been found.
DeVito right there.
In general, they could have found someone better than him. Also, I wasn't particularly convinced by Anya Taylor-Joy as Peach, if I had to be honest. I think
Me neither.
I think it, it's not a matter of, the problem of voice acting or voice acting. She's a fine actress, as we have seen her in the past. Notwithstanding about what she did, what they made her do in New Mutants, of course. It's just that the delivery that she did it didn't really fit what the character facial animation and movement really felt. I don't even know how to describe what an alternative would be, because it's not a matter of being more high-pitched or, or different in terms of tone. I don't know. It's just that there was a bit of an uncanny valley effect to that. I don't know how to describe. And let me tell you also another thing. Jack Black as Bowser actually is probably the best thing about this, in this.
Oh, without a doubt.
But I cannot, consciousness stand the fucking song that he does in the middle of the movie Peaches, because I agree with what a couple of people said. It really feels like Jack Black was just improvising the microphone, and someone from Illumination was like, hold on, we can turn this into an award bait song and put it in the movie. And lo and behold, it worked out. And it really... Jack Black is better than this, and he's better at singing than this.
I wanted a rock song than that,
Okay, here's my overall take. It is a good thing that this movie turned out as decent as it is. Yes, I say decent. Yes. Now, it's very video game.
You can tell he's holding his breath.
People were tripping over themselves to praise this movie and defy any criticism it got, because, yes, it's very video game friendly in the sense that it has a lot of the power-ups. Heck, they even gave the blue shell its own character. That was cool. The thing is, though, for all the video game references we do get, the actual connecting plot is not what I would call stellar, and the arcs given kinda come and go. I kid you not, there's this one arc about Donkey Kong winning the respect of his father, who, yeah, they made Cranky Kong his dad instead of his grandpa in this movie, and that lasts for all of maybe 10
Which also
minutes.
raises the question.
Okay, Cranky Kong's voice is the worst in that entire movie.
Also, I'm just gonna say this. Everything having to do with the Kongs is pretty much pointless. They go to get a Kong army gets captured almost immediately on the Rainbow Road, and they don't really do much aside from Donkey Kong. Just have Donkey Kong if Donkey Kong was all you were gonna do with. Again, that's my main thing about the Mario movie. Yes, it turned out to not be a garbage fire, and I attribute a lot of that more so to Nintendo definitely keeping a leash on Illumination from doing a lot of their usual stuff. Don't get me wrong, it was probably gonna make money anyway, because Illumination just have this black magic. Admittedly, good marketing, which can go a ways, but Illumination just managed to always have their films be profitable. But this time, Nintendo made sure that Illumination didn't cheap out and didn't do all of their stuff. They weren't able to stop everything in that regard.
My point in all of this is that, to get back to this godforsaken award, I honestly don't know what to vote. If I had to be as clean as conscious as possible, I guess I will have to vote The Last of Us. But part of me doesn't really want it because of the easy mode factor. So you know what? I'm gonna go blind, trust Deji blind, and vote for Twisted Metal. Fuck it. Jova.
Last of Us, again, yeah, there's the whole thing about the original game already being mostly a movie, but Last of Us, I feel, did its job the best as an adaptation. It actually gave a good and satisfying story, even changed up some stuff that some people would argue were improvements over the original story. Hell, it was good enough. It gave people hope that the second season, which is adapting that game, can also hopefully salvage things.
We both know that's not gonna happen.
But we can hope. We can hope. But yeah, no, Last of Us, like, legit good adaptation that did its job the best of this bunch. Super Mario Brothers movie, yeah, you were good and decent, but you weren't particularly amazing. I still do feel like it would have been done better under a different studio. And yeah, they did fall for some of the usual picks, like Chris Pratt being in everything. Didn't really feel Peach's actress here or there. Bowser's was great. Charlie Day, yeah, great as Luigi. Seth Rogen, I'm gonna
Harmless.
he actually did work as Donkey Kong. Like, Seth Rogen was not one of the issues with this movie. Keegan-Michael Key gave probably the best Toad voice we have gotten ever. And Kevin Michael Richardson was great as
Comic.
Kamek. And kudos to whoever voiced the Blue Shell Koopa. Again, they literally gave the Blue Shell from Mario Kart its own character. That was great. I don't know what the heck Cranky Kong's voice actor was smoking, though. Because he sounds like he's on some stuff. But yeah, as for Gran Turismo, you're Gran Turismo. Good for you. Twisted Metal, I might have given it the vote if it didn't do that thing of, oh, this is just build up to the actual event. And I do hear there are good aspects, as are here, there are not so great aspects. And Castlevania Nocturne, I think we've said enough as to why that ain't getting my vote. So no, Last of Us, you get my approval.
Edge.
Well, I don't. Okay, here's my issue with Castlevania Nocturne. I saw the first 3 episodes. Why do we have to make Trevor Light? It just felt.
Okay, I don't know if you actually played Rondo Blood, but you played Symphony of the Night, right?
I played a little bit of both, but
okay.
I know, like,
the idea
yes,
behind
Rondo's...
the idea behind Richter is that at that point in the timeline, the Belmont lineup has been become very famous and prestigious because they've been killing Dracula repeatedly over and over again. So
and Simon himself definitely helped boost
twice.
things.
So Richter is essentially having a baggage of his ancestors on his shoulder, a responsibility to uphold, and he's relatively young. So he's kind of a bit of a screw up, but he wants to build a reputation for himself. And Rondo Blood is basically built around that, and Symphony of the Night is supposed to deconstruct that with the idea that Richter was too reckless, too cocky, and fucked up, dooming the entire lineage of Belmont for centuries until the 20th century.
Yeah, and there is enough of that stuff that you could adapt there, but instead it's doing the French Revolution and all that, and it's like this feels like you were embarrassed to adapt Rondo of Blood. Like, people tell me, oh, that game doesn't have much of a plot.
No.
What?
It was actually one of, if I remember correctly, it was the first major Castlevania game to have proper cutscenes.
Because I said I can excuse the original series for doing what they did with 3, because let's be real, 3 didn't have much of a story.
Sure, still not really a good excuse to adapt out the Grand Dynasty, but sure, I guess.
Oh yeah.
That was dumb.
Rondo of Blood, there's a stuff that you can take, especially with Dracula X Chronicles and Symphony of the Night. So it's like, why didn't you just do that? Obviously, they didn't want to crap on Dracula's ending.
Yeah, there's also the problem because of season 4 of Castlevania ended in a sort of definitive way for Dracula, which would have been a bit awkward to bring him back.
Now, that's the frustrating thing about Castlevania Nocturne. Like, they're not clear on whether or not it's supposed to be in the same universe or its own separate thing from the original.
No, it's its own. Do you care?
It gets worse, Jova. Do you remember the person behind this? If I remember distinctly correctly, he mentioned specifically early in development of the Castlevania series that all of the adaptation that he's doing on this specific level, they're set in the same universe, connected with each other. No matter how fucked up that works.
I'm guessing that's the spoilers you're referring to, Didge?
No. Juice is there, and he does name drop Cypher.
So, wait. So in that case, what was up with the marketing of Nocturne? Because I definitely recall them saying, "Oh, don't worry, this is like its own separate thing that will
More
make."
in the
I mean,
case
because
of
it's
you can watch it up without having to have watched the other series
Yeah.
to understand it.
and also we're taking elements from the games, but we're not telling the story for reasons.
In that case, my take is this: they're banking on the success of the original Netflix series to an unhealthy degree, because trying to remove Dracula from the equation is not often gonna help. Like, okay, the thing is, the Castlevania hinges on either preventing the return of or dealing with the return of Dracula each time. I mean, sure, yeah, there are some games without him, but usually the stake always connects to Dracula, no pun intended, because otherwise, doesn't that kind of defeat the point and purpose overall of it? And again, you are adapting Rondo of Blood, the precursor to Symphony of the Night, one of the most beloved games in the franchise, which, oh yeah, that's right, gave us the most iconic design of Dracula. Don't you think it's gonna be a little weird if either adaptation of those doesn't have Dracula in it?
All right, Edge, this still leaves your vote to go, please.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't want to give Neil Druckmann credit, so I'm gonna vote Mario.
Fair.
Okay. I don't think he's been getting credit for the series.
By association.
He's like one of the heads of the show.
Wait, for
He's
real?
heavily involved with it.
Is he really?
Yes. He's a writer here. He wrote some episodes. I think he directed an episode as well.
If I recall correctly, very recently he has also been getting another award.
Yeah.
I really don't understand what people see in him.
I don't get what Sony sees in him, because
It made them a lot of money, Jova. I'm pretty sure I can understand what they see in him.
And I guess they're okay though with that multiplayer project of his not going so hot.
I don't know what to tell you. Anyway,
All right.
next category. This is instead the most anticipated game, recognizing an unannounced game that has demonstrably illustrated potential to push the gaming medium forward. The nominees, as you can imagine, are completely new. We have Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, developed and self-published by Square Enix, Hades 2, developed and self-published by Supergiant Games, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, developed by Ryuga Gotoku Studio and published by Sega, Star Wars Outlaws, developed by Massive Entertainment, published by Ubisoft, and Tekken 8, developed by Bandai Namco and published and self-published by them and Arika. I'm happy to report that compared to last year, which we did have a couple of problems with the nominees, with this year I can argue all of these are perfectly qualifiable in their own way. I could easily just vote any of them and not have any regrets whatsoever about them because of the way they got presented or the way they're trying to build up in terms of gameplay and story. But I gotta go with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I know that Dej is gonna pick Tekken 8 anyway, so I'm gonna be my own bias on that front. I get the suspicion, the sinking suspicion that we're on the precipice of another internet meltdown with Rebirth, because if the ending of Remake was polarizing enough, I get the bad feeling about it, that the ending of Rebirth is gonna have an even more magnitude about it, and I will not hear the end of it. But
Okay.
fuck it, let's try to see what happens anyway.
Like, here's the deal with Rebirth here. And to be fair, part of this discourse is to be blamed on Square themselves for how they handled the remake process through here and there. Let me put it like this. If the ending of Rebirth pretty much shows, oh no, things are pretty much going the same, then people will rightfully call out, well, what the hell was the point of the time ghost stuff in the original
Maybe,
remake,
but I would prefer
change?
it over the other outcome that I'm thinking might happen. So
Which
What, where
is-
they don't have Aerith
no,
die?
well, yes, it's Cloud that dies in her place.
I thought you were gonna say
Okay.
Tifa.
No, that's
Yeah, me too.
that's the major. No, the trailers are misleading you into thinking that Cloud is gaslighting into killing Tifa. No, it's instead because its lines rearranged from different circumstances, and people have noticed it takes combination of lines that are between Arif and Tifa at Gongaga once Cloud talks to Zack's parents. And instead Sephiroth talking about instead Arif and nominating her in a big way, but instead the camera showcased the Nibelheim flashback. So let me tell you, it's just the trailer purposely misleading on that front. No, the thing is that as soon as the first major trailers came out, a couple of different kind of leaks starting going around, and the consistent thing all about them is the fact that it's Cloud that dies in the City of the Ancients, and it's Zack that the alternate timeline Zack that replaces him.
Now, to be fair, that could be leak bait. We have seen a lot of cases where a consistent thing seen in leaks is actually leak bait, and I'll be honest, it would be some massive audacity for Square to kill off Cloud and go, oh no, Zack was the true hero. I know that they did that at some point, but the backlash from that was immense to the point where they walked that back. So it would be cheeky of them to try and do that again.
That's what I mean. If that actually happens, I know that the internet is never gonna let me see the end of it. But whatever. My point is that Seven Rebirth gets my vote regardless. And we'll see what happens next year. Jova.
Yeah, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Don't get me wrong, all these games are good contenders, but Rebirth is the one that speaks the most to me. And I'll be honest, it's tied to Final Fantasy VII, so it's almost kind of cheating, but you have to know, Final Fantasy VII is a cultural phenomenon. Its sales are comparable to that of 14, the literal MMO in that regard. It is that big. Even people who don't know about gaming know about 7 and, as an extension, the remake, because of how much is tied to it. Now, Hades 2... Okay, don't get me wrong, the original Hades was great, but, it is that typical thing where I'm still waiting to see if, they can really keep it going, or if, the first one was just a fluke. So, not particularly my most anticipated. Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth looks good. Admittedly, I'm not as big a Yakuza fan, so not really that big. Star Wars Outlaws. That's a game under Ubisoft, a company who I have issues with for reasons that probably would be very obvious, so I'd say Tekken 8 is probably the runner-up because, there's a lot of buzz around Tekken. Again, though, I gotta give it to 7 Rebirth because it's the one I'm most interested in, and if I'm to honestly look at the data, it's probably the one the internet is most interested in for whatever reason. Be it the speculation on what'll change, the fact that it's tied to 7, what will stay the same,
or just how to pronounce the name of a character, Kate Sif.
That too. I wouldn't be surprised if that was all according to plan.
No, it really wasn't. They just put that Twitter because, people were demanding that and it caused even more damage.
Well, at least we finally got the answer. Anyway, 7 Rebirth. Dej, what's your pick?
Well, as you guys know, Final Fantasy VII is one of my favorite games of all time.
Just get to the point where you avoid tech and that.
It's definitely a game. Yeah, okay, so you don't want me to pull a Jova?
No.
Alright, Tekken 8.
Fair enough.
Hey, Hachi has a daughter now!
And she gets the stereotypical, Central Eastern Asian, violet bang on her head. It feels like a common stereotype these days. Why is it a thing? Anyway, next category is Content Creator of the Year, and I'm happy to report...
Can we skip this one?
No, because I have someone that I can actually vote this time around. Thank God. For a streamer or content creator who has made an important and positive impact in the community in 2023, we have People Make Games, Squackity, Spreen, Cypher Pk, I don't even know how to pronounce this, and my vote, Iron Mouse, a VTuber.
Oh, what a shock. The VTuber gets your vote.
To be fair, again, compared to the last couple of years, I actually know this content creator, and I actually, enjoying the content that she produces. So yeah, she does fit what the award has to say, and, subjectively, she's well deserving of my vote. So yeah.
I joke, but yeah, I'll go with Iron Mouse too, if only because she's probably the one I'm most familiar with out of these guys.
Dedge?
You know how I'll because Tio's my bro. I'll vote for Iron Mouse.
Trust me, you're doing a right decision. Anyway, the last remaining couple of categories are, as usual, the one about esports. So these are the one where you can actually, trim away quickly. First, esport game. For the game that has delivered the best overall esport experience to players, inclusive of tournaments, community support, and content updates, irrespective of genre and platform. We have Counter-Strike 2 from Valve, Dota 2 from Valve, League of Legends, Death, PUBG Mobile from Lightspeed Studios, and Valorant from Riot Games. Much like the last couple of years, I'm sticking, with the classic when it comes to Valve and voting Counter-Strike 2. If you need to know, essentially it's still Counter-Strike Global Offensive, but Valve has updated the engine with a completely free update, no strings attached, that is given to all players. So essentially it's, Counter-Strike, CSGO with, a better coat of paint. Jova?
I'll go with Valorant.
Dedge?
Well, clearly Dota 2 is the best Val. I'll just go to Counter-Strike 2. I don't care. I don't play any of these.
Alright, next one. Best esports athlete. The esports athlete judged to be the most outstanding for performance and conduct in 2023, irrespective of a game. We have Faker, I think we did the show, we actually seen last year, which plays League of Legends, Zaibu, who plays CSGO, Demon 1, who plays Valorant, Hydra, who plays Call of Duty, Ruler, who plays League of Legends, and Imperial Hall, who plays Apex Legends. Again, since I don't know almost any one of these people, I'm gonna vote basing on their game of choice. As such, Zaibu, because of CSGO. You go, man. Jova?
I'm gonna go with Max for Valorant.
Okay.
I'll choose Philip Dozen because Apex Legends.
Okay then. Next, best esports team. Recognizing a specific esport team, not the full organization. Judges for the most outstanding for performance and conduct in 2023. We have Evil Geniuses with Valorant, Fnatic also with Valorant, Gaming Gladiators with Dota 2, JD Gaming, League of Legends, and Team Vitality for CSGO. Surprisingly enough, once again, not Natus Vincere. I usually like those guys, and still no face clans because they can get fucked once again.
The funny thing about these awards is it's funny how the Game Awards site puts these in the later categories, yet you just
they're
know
usually the first to be done in
the
pre-show, because usually they don't really have the time to actually have the content creator show up on stream or the entire team. They did it one year where it was I forgot the name of the character, the guy with the blue fursuit, who won, went on stage and kind of went off script. So I think
Sonic Tails.
I think that was him. But I think so every subsequent year just decide to have these categories swept away under the rug in the pre-show just because. Anyway, once again, I'm voting for the gaming that they're using instead of what the team are, because I don't have too much of a field of reference. So Team Vitality it is for me. You go, people. Jova.
Evil Geniuses, cool name, and you're doing Valorant. And I guess Max is on their team, judging by the looks of that picture.
Dedge.
Yeah, I'll go with what you guys said.
Okay, you have to go with one of us said.
We picked different ones.
Evil Geniuses, I guess.
Alright then. Next, best esport coach. The esport coach judged to be the most outstanding for performance and conduct in 2023. We have Christine Potta for Evil Geniuses and Valorant, Danny Zonic Sorensen for Team Falcons and Counter-Strike, Jordan Gumba Graham for Florida Mayhem Overwatch, Remy XTQZZZ for Koyan for Team Vitality and Counter-Strike, and Nyon Home Seung-yong for JD Gaming League of Legends Death. I'm gonna go, to be fair, now we do have a sort of a field of reference because they might be attached to the team. So since I vote Team Vitality, I'm gonna go with their coach, XTQZZZ Koyan. You go, man. Jova.
I guess I'm gonna go with Christine Potter Chi
That's
for Evil Geniuses Valorant.
I'll go with. Yeah,
You know-
I'll go with her. I'll go with her too.
and
The
last,
gamer girl.
and last but not least, the esport event, recognizing an event across single multiple days, will deliver the best of class experience for participant and broadcast audience. We have the 2023 League of Legends World Championship, Blast TV Paris Mayor 2023, EVO 2023, the International Dota 2 Championship 2023, and Valorant Champions 2023. Much like the other years we voted this, I'm gonna do the same thing and say EVO, because it's the only one I know. There you go.
Yeah, Evo for me too. It's the only one I know.
That's
Evo, because I actually watched that and I had fun with that Street Fighter 6 main event.
fair enough. And with that, we're done with the voting. And there was much
Woo!
rejoicing. Overall, it's fine. It seems to be fine for the most part, but there have been, like we mentioned, a lot of still repetition and misplaced categories. But you can tell it's slightly of an improvement over last year, at the very least, so I can only hope they keep up. Now to have a section about trailer prediction. What do you think might be shown in any trailers? Dej.
Okay, for once, I'm not expecting much. I guess I'm expecting a trailer from Hades 2.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna
Probably.
say Spyro 2, something Spyro related, because next year is the year of the dragon. But I haven't seen Activision do their usual stuff of sending content
No,
creators.
and I get the idea that
maybe-
I get the idea because of the whole buyout from Microsoft, things have been, sort of paused for a while, and now we're about to actually, resume development for anything that they want to do. Not to mention the thing that Microsoft said about their purchase and the bulletin that they put afterward. Ideally, a lot of the studios that are currently working in the cloud mines, like Raven and Toys for Bob, should be actually gave the choice of freedom if they want to continue to stay there or to actually start developing something on their own again. We'll have to
I will
see
say
if
this.
that gets upheld or not.
Spiral wise, there is apparently that new chapter coming to Crash Team Rumble.
There was already stuff from that, like Ripto, I think, in it.
Yes, but not Spyro yet. We got recently, I think, a Twitter update that shows that Spyro and Laura are coming as well. So maybe we'll get a trailer for that. But yeah, I do feel a bit sorry for Spyro fans. Like they haven't gotten like any hint of a Spyro 4, despite supposedly it being in the cards at some point. Yeah, who knows?
So what do you think, Dej, in terms of other trailer potentially?
Tekken 7 technically comes out in January, right?
Tekken 8,
Tekken
yes.
8,
Tekken 8.
7's
And I
already
think
been out.
Arata showcased all the initial roster, so I'm pretty sure we only have to wait until the game releases to start hearing about DLC.
Maybe they'll just show one more trailer just showing off everyone that's playable.
Or part of a story mode, I suppose.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Maybe well, we do not know what the hell Sony's releasing next year.
It might be the Wolverine video game. We do, since now development of Spider-Man 2 has been complete, minus potential DLC episodes. We'll have to see what they do. Insomniac is already probably working on something else, probably Ratchet and Clank, and the Wolverine video game mostly. So at least there is that. We do not know if Santa Monica is already ready to show something, but probably not, because God of War Ragnarok was released last year, so we're gonna take a bit before showing something else. Same goes for Guerrilla, Naughty Dog. I don't know, to be honest.
Because we don't know what the state of Fractions is.
Especially
now.
now that they have a new president after Jimbo finally took the hint and stepped down.
And there's definitely been trouble in Paradise with Bungie. Like,
yeah,
it's not to say that
too.
Sony are a sinking ship, but
no,
like,
they're just very
what
confused.
exactly is their game plan?
We'd only just have to hope and see. But to answer your question, Edge, probably the Wolverine video game. We'll have to see what happens. Maybe a trailer for that. Jova,
By
do
the
you
way,
have
did you
anything
hear
in
about-
particular you're hoping to see a trailer of?
Supersonic Superstars came out, and I'm pretty sure Frontiers is done now, so I don't know, maybe a Sonic spin-off game
Maybe
or
a sneak peek at
something?
Sonic 3 movie?
That would
The
depend
only
on
thing
it.
I can see them
Hold
doing
on.
is, at best, announcing who's going to play Shadow.
Or a
Hold
trailer
on.
for the Knuckles Paramount Plus series?
Too. Because I know that Sonic 3's filming was technically still ongoing, but they were filming the CGI parts during the writers and actors strike.
Yes, Jova?
If they filmed enough, I could see us getting a teaser of Sonic 3, perchance, which would also tie into how we did get a pretty good Sonic 2 trailer. Dude, was that the last game? No, wait, I'm pretty sure that was 2 years ago.
2 years ago with Jim Carrey doing that very, very cringe Scottish accent.
Maybe some Sonic stuff overall. And like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if we get the Spyro and Laura trailer for CTR.
You
Right
mean
there,
Crash
'cause
Team...
we know-
Okay, yeah, Team Rumble is pronounced like that. My bad.
Yep, it's also CTR, much to Dead's
I hate
chagrin.
that name so much.
Do
know
you think
why.
it should have been left called Wumpa League?
Yes.
Okay, let's be honest. I am absolutely certain that they called it Crash Team Rumble just so that they could live off of the obvious acronym.
Also, if you want to be technical, that game was supposed to be part of DLC for Crash 4.
Oh yeah, look, I have made it no secret that I am just not feeling Rumble because it comes off as a money-grubbing and greedy move to try and shake more money out of desperate Crash fans who are afraid to let anything Crash fail out of fear that Activision will put the series on ice again. But I digress.
Do you
Yes.
think we're gonna get another blackout moment? Remember back in 2021, I believe, where Geoff was talking about the gaming industry and how bad things were, especially with misconducts, and then the immediately shows the David Cage game.
Oh, I'm
Oh,
positive we're
gosh.
gonna get something like that. Speaking of which,
that's a good
because this
point.
is something that we didn't really mention last year because I decidedly purposely, not let the audience witness that. I seriously hope, Geoff has actually ramped up decently enough the security to not get stage bombed because some shit like that happened also during the summer of gaming this year. So if it happens
Wasn't
again.
that the same person too?
No,
someone
it was
else.
someone else. But it can set a precedent. People can get inspired to be creative. And the moment someone actually slips with something more dangerous than just a prank, in terms of voice, there are gonna be problems. So I seriously hope that Geoff has actually, put a decent title security without having to be too intrusive about it. I'm pretty sure he can find a balance on that.
Maybe we'll see a Metroid Prime 4 trailer.
Again, I get the idea we're gonna save it for the launch of the new Nintendo console. That's probably is gonna. Okay, if I had to guess, maybe it's gonna be announced next year, but probably late part of the year, than next year. So we're a bit far away from that.
That does get me think. What if we were to potentially get to see a first? Okay, maybe not a first look proper, but at the very least, our first proper hinting at the new Nintendo system.
Potentially someone on
That
stage
definitely
like
has
Doug
been in the
Bowser
talks.
mentioning we're working on it. Usually
And we
they
know that
usually they reserve that for their Nintendo Directs in Toronto or a Twitter announcement to mention that. So I
And we
don't
know
know.
that Nintendo are currently dealing with the headache of the Switch 2 kind of getting leaked due to another company mentioning it in their files here and there.
Also,
so,
apparently at the Gamescom stuff, being mentioned.
So this could be their way of trying to get ahead of the curve by, at the very least, telling people, hey, expect something. Especially if they do the usual trend of announcing it in, like, January or, like, an earlier part of the year like they did with the original
That's also
Switch.
another thing. What is Nintendo in program for next year, ideally?
The Peach game, just remakes and remasters because we have the good Mario vs. Donkey Kong game,
Isn't
Luigi's
that a
Mansion
Peach game,
2.
though? That's original.
And yeah, and the Peach game. So for the most part, It's probably going to be a quiet first half of the year because it's obvious that the Switch 2 is coming out next year.
Unless they pull out like a surprise direct, which
Speaking
reveals
of which,
actually we have these big
unless
whoppers.
unless we
coming
have
out.
a direct before the Game Awards where they mention a couple of this stuff, I'm fully expecting a trailer for the DLC for tied to Tears of the Kingdom, and consequentially a trailer also for not Nintendo related, but a trailer for the DLC of Elden Ring, which has been confirmed a while ago and been in development for a while. So I sure hope to see something about it because it's been almost a year since the Colosseum update. So I hope that Hidetaka Miyazaki has been have been almost done with working on that stuff.
What if we got a trailer of Baldur's Gate 3 DLC to tie in with one of the awards that
It's a
game's
bit too
probably
early
gonna
for
get?
that, ideally. Like, I don't know, it feels like it might be a bit too early for, announcing already DLC stuff. Who knows?
It wouldn't. You have to admit though, it would not be a first
We
though.
probably
Like,
might get, trailer for a DLC for MK1 because NetherRealm Studios has been a relatively sized presence at the Game Awards in the last couple of years. So it might get, we might get one of them, one of the ones of the first package. Probably Homelander because, of course. Who knows?
maybe
I'm
we'll
more wondering what kind of completely unrelated, trailer for a live action movie that has nothing to do with video games, we're gonna get.
maybe we'll also get a new Rebirth trailer too. One that
Well, okay, we already had one just the day we're recording this. We already got one that essentially recaps the events of Remake Part 1 and presents a couple of the side characters with, which will be they're new to the game, but the same thing that Remake did. Characters which were nameless in the original game, but in here they have a new name, like the Innkeeper of Calm, for example, or the Mayor of the Underside of Junon, for example. With respective voice actors. Apparently, Jova, one of the characters is voiced by an actress and voice actress who has been in both Happily Never After and the Alpha and Omega series. So you guys get to enjoy
really.
that. Yes, I will get
Which one?
I will get the details afterward on. My point
Okay.
being. I'm not sure we're gonna see a trailer that potentially, who knows. No, I personally, considering the usual boner that Geoff has for Kojima, we might get another trailer for Death Stranding 2. Who knows? Since, they only got one last year. I personally want to hope to see more of a Wonder Woman video game and the potential relaunch of Multiversus. We'll have to see, especially because, again, Multiversus won the Fighting Game Award last year, so it would be fitting to show it there. But we'll have to see actually if it happens or not. Especially because 2 years ago, if you forgot, the Game Awards were surprisingly, quiet in terms of the, development trailers. They had a lot of trailers for AA games, which some stuff that I personally might have enjoyed, like Space Marine 2, but not a lot of important stuff that they showed 2 years ago. Last year was already back on track with showcasing important stuff, so we don't know actually where we're gonna stand this year, actually.
Yeah, I will admit, similar to Dez, this is quite possibly one of the first Game Awards that I feel like I could probably miss because okay, there's a chance that there will be stellar announcements there, but it's like there's not too much of anticipation in the pipeline at the moment.
It's also like
So it's
we said, it's also important to see because again we don't have the foresight by the time recording, but we'll have to see if there are either a Nintendo Direct, a Sony State of Play, or both before the proper presence of the Game Awards, or even after announced for after it. So we do know for a fact that trailers tied to the Nintendo and Sony probably will not be there. Maybe for some of Microsoft stuff, like that game that Avalanche Studio is making, Contraband, who knows? We'll have to see, I guess. Or Hellblade. God, if Hellblade 2 shows up and it's another one of those quote-unquote cinematic trailers which tries to show gameplay, but it's really just a cutscene propped up, I seriously hope it's not. But again, that's pretty much it, I guess. And again, this video's been going on for way too long anyway. So anyway, that's pretty much it. See you for the Game Awards and to see what the results of all of this prediction will be. See ya.
See you then.
Bye.